Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto and Hinata throw into the devil world. Highschool DxD Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Ino and Hinata were walking through Naruto's compound trying to find the blonde as they were in a rush and needed his help. Naruto-kun, in here. Ino and Hinata went to where they heard the voice and found themselves in a large room that had what looked like empty scrolls and ink bottles. This was the seal's room, a room that Naruto used to practice or make seals. The room itself was reinforced with solid concrete behind the wooden walls in case one of his seals accidentally exploded. They saw Naruto standing in the center with a massive unrolled scroll in front of him. He looked to be concentrating on the seal in front of him. The two females walked closer to him and looked at what he was looking at. It was a circle of writing with a smaller simple line circle inside and 6 lines of writing that connected the two circles, 3 lines on the lower section, and 3 at the top. Hinata asked the boy, Naruto-kun, what is that? Naruto knelt down and grabbed a brush that was laying off the paper and dipped it into the ink bottle next to it. It's something that I have been working on for a while now. But forget that, did you girls need something? Ino nodded. Yeah, Team 8 and 10 are going on a joint mission, and we were hoping you had a couple of storage scrolls we could use for it. Naruto nodded as he pointed to his right. Sure. There are some storage scrolls of different sizes on the shelves over there. Ino and Hinata nodded as they moved over to the wall of scrolls. On the lowest shelf were the storage scrolls varying from the size of a hand, normal size, and some in contract sizes for larger loads. Hinata and Ino grabbed a normal size scroll and one of the larger scrolls as they were going to store all of their supplies and deliveries in it, and the smaller scroll is to hold the larger one. Once they were sure they had the ones they needed, they moved back to Naruto, who was slowly writing on the seal he was working on. Okay, now to test it. The girls got close to Naruto as Ino put the large scroll down and leaned on it as she asked, okay Naruto, what exactly is that seal? Naruto looked up at Ino and in an honest voice said, I don't know. Both girls tilted their heads as Hinata repeated, you don't know. Ino looked incredulous at the boy. How can you not know when you're working on it? Naruto put the brush down as he looked it over. Well, Erosen and showed this seal to me a while ago, and told me that it was part of a jutsu that was unrivaled by any other jutsu. Then how can you not know what it is? Naruto sighed as he spoke, because when he told me that, a woman walked by us just a bit away. Once he saw her, he ran after her, with the paper that had the drawing of the seal on it. He didn't come back until the end of the day, and when he did he told me that he used the paper to wipe his face of the drink that was thrown into his face. The writing was all smudged and unreadable. He just gave me a sheepish smile and said oops. He then told me that even if I saw it completely, it was an incomplete drawing of the original seal. Ino put her hands on her hips as she couldn't believe what she heard. So he shows you an incomplete seal for an amazing jutsu for a split second before going after some woman, and comes back with it ruined? Yep. Oh sweet Kami. Ino could not help but facepalm at the stupid turn of events that led Naruto to try this. Naruto brought his finger up. I actually was able to get a good view of it, and I have been trying to recreate it as best I could for months. This is actually the first time I finished it, and I'm about to test it to see what it does. Hinata felt worried about this. Naruto-kun, are you sure you should be testing it if you don't know what might happen? Naruto pointed to the larger circle of script. From what I can see, this part here looks like it's part of a summoning circle, so I'm guessing that it might be a summoning of sorts. If I get it wrong, then nothing should really happen, and if something does happen, then the worst would be that it blows up in my face. Ino shook her head. That doesn't really instill confidence, Naruto. Are you sure you want to do this? Well, like I said, I'm going to test it out to see if I got it right. Hinata had a bad feeling about this as she looked to Ino with worry in her eyes. Maybe we should stay to make sure that nothing bad happens. Ino sighed as she looked at a clock on the wall. Well, we don't need to meet with the others for another hour, so we can stay here to make sure he doesn't do anything to get hurt. Both girls chose to stand right behind Naruto as he prepared to activate the seal. Naruto channeled chakra into his hand and took a deep breath. I've got a bad feeling about this, kit. Be careful. Got it too, Chan. Naruto lifted his hand and slammed it in the middle of the seal as if he was summoning something. All three watched as the seal began to brighten in a brilliant blue light. What they didn't expect was the light becoming even brighter. In fact, it became so bright that they used their hands to cover their eyes. Naruto! What's going on? I don't know. Naruto-kun. The light became so bright that it was impossible to keep their eyes open. This kept going until, aha! The light died down to show that the three were no longer in the room. In fact, there was no trace of them anywhere in the compound. In a flash, the three reappeared somewhere they never thought they would ever be, hundreds of feet in the air. Aha! The three panicked as they opened their eyes to see that they were much higher than any of them have ever been, and they knew for a fact that they would not survive the fall. Naruto noticed that he wasn't in his human form anymore, as he felt his tails flail in the air, but at the moment he needed to save the two girls. Extending his tails, he wrapped them around their waists, and brought them to him. Once he had them, he wrapped them in his arms and tails, creating a sort of protective ball around them using his body. Hinata saw what he was doing and grew more worried. Now, Naruto. What are you doing? Saving you too. Ino also realized this and shouted, Naruto. The now ball of fur was falling fast enough that he could feel his back heating up. Soon he made impact with the ground fast and hard. Boom! The ground shattered, sending a shockwave that could be felt for miles. Hinata and Ino were clutching the fur as they felt the impact who were still covered by the tails, so it gave the little pocket they were in an orange light. Opening their eyes and trying to regain their bearings, they both grew worried as there was no movement from their third member. Hinata began to shake Naruto's chest. Naruto? She continued to shake, hoping for any sign of movement. Ino brought her hands up to his muzzle. Naruto, open your eyes. She shook his muzzle, but he still did nothing. Naruto, this isn't funny. Hinata had tears in her eyes as she was afraid that they could have just lost the one they love. She buried her face in his fur as she began to cry. Ino would not accept this as she kept shaking him, but she also began to tear up. Naruto, Naruto. She slammed her fist in his chest as she was at her breaking point. Naruto, gasped. Both girls looked at Naruto's face and felt sheer relief as he opened his eyes. Naruto could only groan in pain now. Hinata moved closer to his muzzle. Naruto, what hurts? Everything. He slowly began to uncurl himself and let his tails fall to the ground. My healing is already working on my shattered body, but it's going to take a while. Before either of the two females could say anything, they heard voices around them. They noticed that they were in a cloud of dust that was clearing up. They saw that they were in a crater, which made sense based on the impact they made. But they saw some unfamiliar people wearing out clothing. What they didn't know was that based on said clothing, they weren't in Konoha, since absolutely no one wore what these people were wearing. Suddenly Naruto's eyes shot open. We need to leave. Hinata looked to Naruto as he began to slowly get up. She and Ino moved off him. Why? Naruto flopped to his side as he tried to get up but found it extremely painful. I sense our chakra signatures coming, and they feel weird. He turned to look at the two, and if he wasn't covered in fur, they would have noticed his face turning crimson in a blush. He turned his head away, which caused him to wince in pain but kept his gaze away. The two girls were confused about what he was doing, but they felt a breeze pass through them, and they felt chills where they shouldn't. Looking down, they saw that most of their clothes were gone. Well, actually all of them were gone except for a few small things such as their headband, kunai holster, and sandals. Both shrieked in embarrassment, and covered themselves as best they could. Naruto winced again at the shriek, but he didn't have time to think of what to do since the two girls then used his tails to cover themselves. The issue? He can still feel through his tails. He had to shake these thoughts out of his head since he could feel the unfamiliar chakra getting closer. Using the tails around the girls, he picked them up and placed them on his back while still using the tails to cover them, and began to slowly move out of the crater. As painful as it was, he did not want to risk what could potentially be an enemy when he was at the moment wounded heavily. He didn't pay attention to the people since their chakra was so low that he would almost think that they didn't have any. But he brushed it off since all living things had chakra in order to live. Once at the edge of the crater, he pushed himself as much as he could and ran away in a random direction, entering an alley and using the shadows to keep them hidden. A few men and women, all wearing Miko clothing, ran into the area and were surprised to see a massive crater in the middle of the street. They looked around to see that many citizens were injured due to what could have impacted here, and some of them went to aid the injured by moving them further away from the hole. A priest began to examine the crater to see if he could get any clue as to who did this. An attack like this is not tolerated by any of them, especially Yasaka. They all felt the power that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and they were all worried that one of the other factions had sent out an attack, and this damage could very well confirm that fear. Thought the amount of damage does not match the amount of power they felt. Something else that was concerning was the fact that it felt like chakra. This brought more worry since it could mean one of their own could have done this. Soji. The priest turned around to see one of the females walk up to him. What is it, Miho? I heard something concerning. Seeing him nod for her to continue, she began, as we were helping the injured to locations so they may be retrieved by medics. Many of us overheard that a large multi-tailed fox came out of the crater with two bear females before it ran away. She pointed in the direction the people said it went. Soji grew some concern when he heard of the two females that were spoken of, but the sound of a multi-tailed fox here brought panic to him. He could only think of the only two multi-tailed foxes that exist. He looked at Miho again. Was there anything about it that was of note? Miho shook her head. Apart from how they had said it was an odd sight, nothing more of note was said. Soji nodded. Miho, head to the temple and request a meeting with Lady Yasaka. Ask if either she or Kuno were here. If it was one of them, then there must be a reason. It might be that Kuno has gained a fox form and did not know how to control the power she had. Also, inform the others to begin to erase their memory of the fox. No one is to remember about this. Miho bowed as she walked away. Shoji went off to begin the erasure of the humans' memories. He could not help but think to himself what exactly happened here, as he felt that there was something more to this. Miho was kneeling to the ever-beautiful leader of the Yokai faction. Yasaka, an extremely busted woman that had beauty that could rival Gabriel from the Angel faction, was concerned with the information that she had heard from the young woman in front of her. I can assure you that neither me nor my daughter, she gestured to her 8-year-old daughter that sat next to her, were out of the temple today. I have also felt that sudden surge of chakra and am concerned greatly with the information you have given me. Kuno and I are the only remaining fox yokai that possess multiple tails. The fact that the humans are speaking of seeing another one could potentially mean that either that there was one out there in hiding, or one of the other factions is plotting something that could create discord within our faction. Miho lifted her head with a questioning look. What do you mean, Lady Yasaka? The power I felt from that surge was not only immensely powerful, But it was also different from our own chakra. The fallen angels or devils could have attempted to create their own QB as a means to attack us and usurp my title. She stood up and gave an order to all that were in the room: seek out this intruder and bring it to me. If it proves too much, then retreat, and inform me so that I will handle it myself. I will not allow anything to disrupt the fragile peace we have here. Everyone nodded as most of them left, with a few remaining to continue to guard their leader. Yasaka is usually a very kind woman, but this situation requires her to take action. A threat to her people must be dealt with. Mother? Yasaka looked at her daughter as the said girl was giving her a quizzical look. Kuno, I want you to remain here on the temple grounds as we go find this unknown intruder. Do you understand? Kuno nodded her head as she could tell how serious her mother was. Yasaka smiled as she hugged Kuno before she got to her feet and went to her guards and led them out to join the search. She knew that as long as her daughter remained in view of the guards, she would be relatively safe. Naruto, Ino, and Hinata. Naruto had left the odd village they found themselves in and was now running through a heavy forest. He didn't know why, but he felt the need to get both Ino and Hinata away from the populated area. The main problem right now was the fact that at the moment he was in pain. The fall had done some damage to his body since he had not braced his body enough. He had felt worse pain before. Heck, his shifting back when he was somewhat human was far more painful than this, but he felt the need to take a nap. Two-chan, can you help out my healing? Already on it. It's not anything major, but a nap would help you heal faster. Naruto came to a stop as he began to try and catch his breath. Hey, you okay, Naruto? Naruto looked to his passengers before he answered Ino's question. Yeah, but I'm going to need some time to heal as that fall really hurt my back. Ino smirked at Naruto before saying you're not old enough to have back problems. Hinata, however, felt more concerned about him. Are you sure you're okay, Naruto? Naruto answered by collapsing to the ground and lay on the ground, causing the two girls to yelp in surprise. Yeah, I just need a nap. So give me some time, and whatever he was about to say stopped in his throat when he felt a few chakra signatures close by. Crap. Hinata was greatly worried since it seemed that he noticed something. Naruto. What is it? Naruto shifted his eyes to Hinata and Ino as he began to think of what to do. Sure, he could probably put up a fight, but with how the girls were right now, he would need to protect them as well, despite the fact that the chakra levels of the girls were vastly stronger than the other signatures he felt. But he didn't want to risk them, so he came up with a quick lie. Nothing, Hinata. But do you girls mind going out and scouting the area? Seeing the questioning look coming from the two, he chose to push the lie. We don't know where we are, and it would be bad if we are captured by an enemy we don't know about. While you're gone, I will stay here and regain my strength. Ino gave Naruto an incredulous look. Why would we leave you alone in a possibly hostile area? Ino, I'm a censor. I am also stronger than both of you, even if I feel like a doll that was given to a hyperactive kid. If anything is coming my way, I can hide or fight back, but I really need to rest. Ino did not let up her look, but she got off Naruto's back with Hinata doing the same, while they still tried to cover themselves. Fine, but you better not do something stupid while we are gone. Naruto rolled his eyes as he gave a sigh of relief. Ah, that is so much better. A tick mark appeared on Ino's head. That better not be a jab at our weight. Naruto chuckled sheepishly as he looked anywhere but at her. He winced when he felt her give his side a somewhat hard kick. Hey. Injured here, you'll live. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Hinata knelt down and began to rub his side with one hand as she used her other hand to hide her, and her legs to hide her lower region. She felt extremely embarrassed at the fact that she was naked, but she was still worried about what happened just 30 minutes ago. Naruto gave an appreciative smile at Hinata, but he grew serious after a second. Don't worry, you two. I'll be safe, but we really need to know where we are, and at the moment, stealth is not in my arsenal. Ino rolled her eyes as the stealthiest ninja in Konoha. Naruto looked at her. Ino. Oh, fine. She was about to remove her hands that were covering what they could to do the hand sign to henge some clothes on, but she stopped when she noticed that he was still looking at her. Turn around. Naruto was glad that his fur hid his blush as he turned his head to look the other way until he heard two poofs. Looking back, he saw that both Ino and Hinata were now wearing their normal attire. Hinata was still blushing heavily as she whimpered out, it still feels odd. Naruto nodded his head as he could figure that it would, since they are only hinged clothing, which meant that although it looked like they were wearing something, they were still naked with illusional clothing on. Okay, don't forget to stay in the shadows and remember what I taught you about stealth. Ino rolled her eyes again. You mean what we learned in the academy, and the few tips you gave us to improve our stealth? Yeah, we remember. Naruto nodded as he could feel the other chakra signatures still a ways away from them but getting slowly closer. Just be careful, you two. Ino smiled at Naruto. You be careful. Hinata placed a kiss on his forehead as she whispered, stay safe, before she moved to stand with Ino, and the two disappeared into the forest in the direction of where they came from, but more to the side as to not end up in the same area they landed. Naruto kept his senses on them until he knew that they were a good distance away. Once he knew that they were far enough, he got to his feet and began to move in another direction, and pulsed his chakra to get their chasers' attention. Once he knew that the pursuers were not going in the direction of Ino and Hinata, he hid his chakra signature and moved in a completely different direction. Naruto had made his way into a clearing within the forest before he collapsed onto the ground in pain. Okay, not the worst pain ever, but damn, do my muscles hurt. He couldn't sense any of his chasers heading in his direction. He relaxed a bit as he felt that he was in the clear for now. He decided to take a nap to speed up his healing, but he would wake up if he detected anything negative close by. Nap time. He closed his eyes and immediately went to sleep. Poke poke, Naruto grumbled when he felt something poke his face. Poke poke, 5 more minutes Ino. Who's Ino? It only took Naruto a split second to realize that the voice not only did not belong to Ino or Hinata but it sounded younger than him, and was not Asa. His eyes shot open and he turned his gaze to a girl in a shrine maiden outfit. She had golden blonde hair tied into a ponytail, and eyes that were just as gold, but the thing that caught his attention the most were the fox ears on top of her head, and the 9 tails that swayed behind her. He stared at the girl dumbly as he was trying to figure out what he was looking at. It was only when she poked his nose, causing him to go cross-eyed, that he was brought out of his confusion. Good afternoon. Who are you and what are you doing in our backyard? Naruto blinked a few times before asking backyard. The girl nodded yep. You are in my home's backyard. I come here with my mother sometimes to play. Naruto looked around to see if he could see any house nearby, but all he saw was more forest. How big is her backyard if I can't even see her house? He looked back at the girl and could not help but stare again at the extra features she had. Tuchan. Am I crazy, or does this girl have fox ears and tails? No. You haven't gone crazy. I see them too and I am just as confused as you are. I don't sense any of my chakra in her, so it can't be because she absorbed some of it. Naruto looked the girl over before he decided to get up. Unfortunately, he did not count on the fact that he wasn't fully healed yet and fell back down. How long have I been out? Couple minutes. No wonder I don't feel any better. I barely closed my eyes to nap before she woke me up. The little girl noticed the wince of pain on this other fox yokai, and grew worried. Oh no, you're injured. Wait here, I'll go get some help. Naruto's eyes grew wide as he saw the girl run off. Hey wait. His call went unheard as she made it to the tree line before disappearing into the forest. He plopped his head onto the ground and groaned, damn it. She could be with the ones chasing us, and here I am feeling like I pulled every muscle in my body. It didn't take long for him to feel chakra signatures coming towards him. Great. She was with them. Getting to his feet, he began to slowly walk in the opposite direction that the signatures were coming from. Unfortunately, he was not fast enough as a group of birdmen and fox people surrounded him. He could not help but stare at them as he couldn't wrap his head around the fact that he was surrounded by these odd people. His keen hearing did pick up whispers coming from some of them. This must be the one that we were sent out to find. He had gotten so close to the shrine and very few were here to protect Lady Kuno. He must not be allowed to escape. During all this, the little girl who he assumed was Kuno walked up to him. You are injured. Why are you trying to run away? Naruto looked down at the girl and gave her a toothy grin. Because I like playing hide and seek. Kuno puffed out her cheeks in a pout. Mother always told me that I should rest if I am hurt, so you should too. You can play later. Out of the many things that he expected, he did not expect to get scolded by a girl just a few years younger than him. It was so ridiculous that he ended up laughing. Ha 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 ha. Everyone there was a little stunned at the sight in front of them. Their leader's daughter was at the moment pouting at a larger 6-tailed fox, albeit an odd-looking one. They shook their heads out of their shock in time to see Kuno stomping her feet on the ground, reprimanding the still laughing yokai. They closed in on the two, with one fox woman gently pulling Kuno away with a group of Tengu raising their weapons at the red fox. You are to come with us peacefully. Naruto stopped laughing as he looked at the bird people around him. He could sense the chakra levels they had and knew for a fact that based on that he could beat them all easily if he went all out. But right now he was still worn out, and was still in the process of healing. He still tried his luck though. And if I say no? I would very much like it if you said yes, as I wished to speak with you since you had not harmed my daughter when you had the chance. Everyone looked to where the voice came from to see Yasaka walking towards the group. The ones that were with Kuno bowed to her while the ones surrounding Naruto kept their gazes and weapons on him. Naruto could not help but be in awe of the voluptuously beautiful woman that was coming closer. Though it wasn't just her beauty that caused him to be this way. It was also the fact that she was just like Kuno. A 9-tailed fox woman. Did you have family that I didn't know about, Tuchan? Besides you and my fellow Bijano. He was also confused about this woman, as there should not be another 9 tails since he is the only one. Naruto heard the others there call the woman Lady Yasaka. He figured that she was someone of great importance if everyone was bowing to her. He watched as she stopped right in front of him and looked him over. He felt a little self-conscious as he was never looked at with intrigue before, much less in his fox form. Deciding to be the first to talk, he lifted his paw, which caused the bird people to tense up. Yo, he gave Kakashi's signature hellos, which caused some of the Tengu to face fault while the rest sweat dropped. Yasaka, however, just smiled. Based on the tone of the voice, she concluded that this yokai was young, extremely young, and she could not feel any ill intent coming from him, kind of a gut feeling, instead of an actual sense. Greetings. My name is Yasaka, leader of the yokai faction and protector of Kyoto. May I ask who you might be and what your intentions are? Naruto paused as several things about what she said confused him. He didn't feel any malice coming from the woman, but the guards around him were not helping him relax. My name Ao is Naruto Ao Uzumaki Ao. And Ao, what do you mean Ao? You are Ao, the protector of Ao Kyoto. Where even is Ao that? And what Ao is the Ao yokai faction Ao? Yasaka would have taken this seriously if it wasn't for the fact that her daughter was at the moment tugging on one of his ears. Her smile grew at the fact that Kuno seemed so interested in this newcomer. Kuno stopped what she was doing and looked to her mother. Seeing the slight reprimanding look her mother had, she let go of Naruto's ear and moved to stand by Yasaka. Naruto was glad that the tugging stopped. Despite it not hurting, it was still somewhat of an irritation. However, he could not help but smile at the Kuno that now stood with Yasaka. Well, now I am curious about you, young Naruto. How are you not aware of the yokai faction when you yourself are a yokai, albeit an interesting one? Are you perhaps ignorant of what you are, or you are playing ignorant to get on my good side? Naruto tilted his head in confusion as he could not think of a reason why it would be a bad thing. Sure, she said she was the leader of a group, but he didn't know anything about them, or what village he was in. If he wasn't so sure that he wasn't in Konoha, he might have guessed he was based on the abundance of forest around him. He didn't like the fact that he was surrounded, but he couldn't make a move just yet. I know what I am, but I still don't know what this yokai faction is. I just did some crazy jutsu and found myself falling before crash landing in this weird place with weirdly dressed people around me. Then I go to take a nap to rest, and then Kuno there pokes me and wakes me up. She goes to get me some help, and now I am surrounded but bird people and some fox people. He made sure not to mention Ino or Hinata, as at the moment he wanted to get some info about where he was. Enko made sure to pound a lesson on info gather into his head. One of the Tengus sneered at him, a likely story. Naruto looked at the crow person with irritation evident in his eyes. And what does that mean? You obviously came here for something. You most likely attacked a public place to get us to begin a search for you, and while the shrine was empty, you come here and kidnap Lady Kuno. Naruto glared at the Tengu. Keep talking like that, and I'm going to have some fried bird for lunch. Why you? Enough. Yasaka flared her power to get them all to become silent. Naruto was in awe by the show of power, but he was unaffected by it. He sighed as he mentally asked, well, how am I? You won't be able to fight at your fullest, but you're good to go with what you want. Good. As Yasaka was looking at her subjects, Naruto got back onto his feet and stretched out his back legs one at a time. The movement caused them all to tense as he popped a joint in his leg. Yasaka finally noticed his size. Standing up, he was a little under her height. She examined his body more, and if she had to say anything about him, she would have to say that he was rugged compared to her fox form, and the tail seemed to be in constant motion. She also took note of the black marking that went from his eyes to his, what she assumed to be the mane tail. She also noticed the small bit of blonde fur that bordered between his black-furred paws and the red fur that took over most of him. Naruto looked Yasaka in the eye and smiled. Well, as much fun as it was to be held prisoner, sort of. It's time for me to go. The Tengu surrounding Naruto tensed up and held their weapons firm, with one of them saying, what makes you think you can just leave? Naruto smiled at the Tengu that spoke as his tails stopped moving. What makes you think you can stop me? At that moment he spread his tails to be in a fan formation. Suddenly smoke bombs fell around him, causing everyone to jump in surprise. Everyone covered their faces as they all began to cough. Yasaka and Kuno kept their gaze at the spot Naruto should be at. They both heard a poof and soon saw a silhouette in the smoke that did not resemble the fox they just spoke to. It was human-shaped and looked only to be a little taller than Kuno. Thanks for trying to help me, Kuno, and it was nice to meet you, Yasaka. Maybe we will meet again. Yasaka and Kuno tried to see through the smoke, but the only thing they could barely see were a brilliant set of blue eyes and a cheeky smile with cheeks that had whisker marks. They then saw that he disappeared from within the smoke. Once the smoke cleared, Naruto wasn't anywhere to be seen. Yasaka could not help but smile, as this was an interesting meeting she had with a boy that appeared from nowhere. What an interesting boy. Everyone there began to call out that they should go find the fox as fast as possible. Naruto was running through the forest hinged into his normal shinobi attire. Thanks for the save, you two. Ino and Hinata were looking at Naruto, with the latter looking relieved that he was okay and the former looking irritated. Did you have to do that, Naruto? We could have just left and figured out stuff later when you were fully healed. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, but I didn't expect to run into these weird people when I went to go take a nap. And I wanted to get them off your tail too. Ino shook her head. Fine. Did you get anything useful? Not much. Just that woman was the leader of the yokai faction, whatever that is, and that this is someplace called Kyoto. Hinata and Ino looked at him in confusion, as neither of them had heard of such a place. Hinata then thought to say something. Naruto, there is something you should see. Naruto tilted his head before nodding and slowed down a tad so he could follow the girls to where they wanted to take him. The three soon ran up a building and stood on top of it and looked out onto the area. Naruto was even more confused now, seeing bright moving carriages, people wearing weird clothes, and buildings unlike any he had ever seen before. As he looked at the scene, all he could think of asking was, where the hell are we? The three shinobi were looking out on the civilization they now know as Kyoto. None of them could understand where they were, but what they did know was that Naruto's seal test had sent them somewhere. Ino was shaking Naruto by his collar while shouting in his face, Naruto, what the hell was that seal you used? I told why you that I don't know. Well, you better figure it out, because right now we are in an unknown village, being chased by weird animal people, and we don't have any clothes. Hinata wanted to stop Ino from what she was doing, but what she said caused her to become more alert. She activated her Byakugan and sent out her vision as far as she could. Through this action, she noticed something rather disturbing and something else alarming. The disturbing bit though can wait, as she spoke to her companions. Naruto! Ino! They are coming this way. Ino stopped shaking Naruto and dropped him before she became serious. How far? 150 meters and closing. They aren't on a direct path, but they are coming towards our general direction. Naruto got back to his feet and looked at the two. They send out groups to find me, so it might be that the group is just coming this way, but they might have a sensor and sensed us when we went up the wall. Looking down at the people that were walking in the streets, he thought about what they could do to evade their pursuers. He looked to the two again as he went into the role of a squad leader, and gave his orders. I want you two to henge into an outfit close to one of the civilians there. They don't know about you two, so you should be off their radar. They are looking for a large fox, so they shouldn't recognize me if they see me, but if they do have a sensor, then they may be able to recognize my chakra signature. They will be after me. You two are to go out and gather some information about this area and see if you could get some actual clothes. When you think you have enough, find an abandoned building or something. I will find you tonight. Clear? Ino tilted her head as she asked, what are you going to be doing? Naruto smiled his prankster smile as he said, a game of hide and seek. Both girls smiled, with Ino shaking her head good-naturedly before they moved to the edge of the water tower to see what they could mimic. They each found something they could work with and brought their hands up to henge into the outfits. Hinata's outfit was a lavender kimono with a sakura petal pattern and a cream obi. She looked down and found that she liked what she had chosen. Ino was much different. Ino was now wearing a pair of tight jeans and a purple crop top. She also looked herself over and knew she made it look good. One thing that the two kept the same were their sandals. Although Naruto thought both of them looked good, he quirked an eyebrow at the major difference between the two. He moved to stand next to them and looked down at the people. Ino, where did you see that outfit? He asked as he searched for who was wearing what Ino was wearing. Ino grabbed Naruto's chin and gently turned his head to the left and pointed out a girl wearing the same outfit but with a red top and hat. Looking around and pointing at everything she thought was cool, Naruto looked at the girl and Ino before shrugging. Okay. It was now his turn to look for an outfit, but he didn't have a lot of time, so he just saw a simple one and went with that. He hinged his outfit into slightly baggy jeans and an orange shirt, but keeping his hinged sandals. He looked at the two before he hugged them and whispered out, be careful out there. The two girls hugged him back before they separated. Hinata smiled at him. You too. Naruto nodded as he gave one final piece of advice, don't use any chakra and make sure not to draw any attention to yourself. At that, all three jumped away and found their way to street level before they blended into the crowds just in time for a few Miko and priests to arrive on the rooftop. They were just on, looking around but not finding anything that gave them an idea of where their target went. Ino found herself in a shop that, from what she could tell, sold souvenirs. She found herself looking at a few of them and found that there were little figures of buildings and possible landscapes that had names that were odd to her. As she looked around the store, she found a map for sale and figured that it would help them figure out where they were. Grabbing one, she went off to the register and was about to pull out some emergency money that she kept in her weapons pouch, but stopped when she caught a glimpse of the currency a male customer was using. Although the money looked similar, there were some key differences between what she had and what he had. She took a step back and went back to looking around. At least that was what it looked like. She was stealing glances at other customers as they paid and saw that not only were the bills different but so were the coins. What kind of Ryo are they using? If that is how they all look, then none of the Ryo I have will work. Either that or they will know I'm from another village. She was brought out of her thoughts when she saw a couple of Miko coming into the store, and they were looking around for something. Crap! She moved further into the store to avoid them, but much to her chagrin they were drawing closer to her. Gotta hide my chakra. Pausing in front of some snow globes, she took a deep breath and concealed her chakra as best she could. The two Miko paused their advancement for a second before continuing. They had lost the signature they were looking for as it was unfamiliar to them. They had assumed that it was the fox that escaped them but were unsure since although they all could sense chakra, none of them could tell the difference between one or the other. They only followed the signature because it felt different from what they were used to, which was odd to them. Ino was internally panicking as the Miko had stopped right behind her. She paused her browsing to look at them and give a friendly greeting before moving away. As she moved away, she caught sight of them jolting their head out of the entrance before they quickly walked out of the store and ran in a random direction. She was confused about this for a second before she let her chakra loose for a split second and used her sensor ability to see what it was they were chasing. She knew immediately that Naruto was pulsing his chakra to get their attention. Thank you, Naruto. She decided that it was time to move on. Seeing the map in her hand, she questioned whether or not to just take it. From what she could tell, none of the occupants of the store were shinobi, so she could sneak it out. But she hated the idea of stealing from a store like this. Kunoichi she may be, but sometimes she just felt wrong for this kind of thing. Mentally steeling herself, she moved back over to the maps pile before swiftly removing her map out of its plastic wrapping and threw said wrapping into a bin that had some umbrellas. She slipped her map into her weapons pouch and grabbed another wrapped-up map to make it look like the map never left her hand. She placed the map back into the stack that was there before heading out of the store. She gave a farewell to the elderly man that was at the register before exiting and walking off. If our currency is different from everyone's here, then getting supplies is going to be a bit harder. She looked around at the people before thinking better start gaining intel. Naruto gave me the chance, so I better use it. Making sure to hide her chakra signature, she began her objective, while hoping Hinata was having better luck than she was. Hinata was having just as much luck as Ino. She had also seen that the currency was different from what she had and figured that she would not be able to buy anything. Unlike Ino, Hinata had chosen not to steal from anyone as she was completely against doing such a thing. She had also had a run-in with 3 priests, but the difference is that they were confronting her. "Excuse me, but may we be of assistance? Please take no offense to this, but we had noticed that you are blind and do not seem to have a guide," spoke one of the priests. He had dirty blonde hair that stopped at his shoulders and simple brown eyes. Hinata smiled as she put on a simple bystander act. "I thank you for your offer, but I am not in actuality blind. Although my eyes are like this, I can see perfectly fine." She bowed to them in a show of thanks for the kind gesture. The second priest, a man with black hair and sharp black eyes, showed his surprise as he spoke. "Oh, forgive us. We were under the assumption that you had lost your way due to an inability to see." He bowed along with the other 2, asking for forgiveness. Hinata smiled as this was not the first time that someone had mistaken her eyes for being blind. In Konoha, there were times a civilian or child that would offer their help thinking that she was blind only to find out that the Hyuga eyes were all like this, even if hers had a different tint to them. She always found it amusing as a dojutsu that had the ability to see almost 360 degrees around looked like the eyes of someone who had lost their sight. She smiled at them as they raised their heads before speaking. "There is no need to worry. I am used to people believing that, and I hold no ill will to you." The third priest, a man with pure blonde hair, nodded. "Well, forgive us for the misunderstanding. Although why are you here on your own? A young girl like you should not be without your parents." Hinata felt a bit nervous because if she said that she was on her own, they might wish to escort her around, and that was something that could cause problems. She was about to respond when the 3 jerked their head to their right. "Did you feel that? Yes, we should pursue it. But what about?" The 3 priests looked at Hinata, who smiled at them. Hinata folded her hands in front of her as she bowed. "Please, do not worry about me. I am on my way to meet someone and I should not hold you up with my errand." The 3 nodded to each other before the black-haired priest spoke to her. "As long as you remain in a populated area and watch out for any unsavory characters." Hinata bowed again. "I will, and thank you for your concern." He then looked to the other 2 and whispered out, "We should go before we lose track of it." Seeing the other 2 nod, he looked back to Hinata and gave his farewell along with the other 2. Hinata watched them leave and sighed in relief. That was close. I should begin information gathering before looking for Ino. She walked back into the crowd to begin gathering intel on their location. Park. Naruto was sitting on a bench, enjoying the slight reprieve he gained from the game of hide-and-seek with the malicious and priests. He even had to hold in his laughter when a few just walked past him, looking around as if they got a brief ping of his signature, and unable to see the fox they were looking for. It also made him think they weren't really taking it seriously since they themselves had fox ears and a tail, but they hid them so they could walk around the people, and it looked like they didn't even consider that he could do something like that. But at the moment it didn't matter as he leaned his head back, closed his eyes, and felt the need to rest a bit. He would like to take a nap, but at the moment he was in a henge, not a shift. So if he took a nap, his henge would dispel and he would show his fox form to the world. After a few minutes of resting, he felt a couple of chakra signatures getting closer. He kept his eyes closed as if he was just a normal bystander enjoying the day. It's how he acted when the malicious and priests were around, so he figured that these 2 would just walk past him. After a few moments, he felt that the 2 just stopped in front of him. He didn't feel any negative emotion coming from the 2 and wondered why these 2 would just stop there. He had his chakra signature completely concealed, so it shouldn't be that they sensed him. He kept wondering this until he recognized the 2. "It is a lovely day to enjoy in the park, isn't it, young Naruto?" Crap. He now recognized fully the chakra signature as well as the voice. Opening his eye and straightening his head, he saw that the 2 that were in front of him were Yasaka and Kuno. He sighed in defeat as he knew that he wouldn't be able to say that he wasn't Naruto since the 2 didn't ask if he was Naruto. They knew that he was. "How did you know it was me?" Yasaka smiled at the boy as she moved her hand over to him. Naruto felt no ill intent, so he allowed her to move. Not only that, the woman gave off a gentle aura that just made you like her. Yasaka placed her hand on his cheek before she ran her thumb over his whiskers. "We were able to catch a glimpse of your cheek and eyes. Although in your fox form, you have the same brilliant eye color, and would be easy to hide. Your whiskers are easily recognizable." Naruto did his best not to purr as she stroked his whiskers as he looked into the woman's eyes. He caught movement in his peripheral vision, and turned his head to see Kuno getting on the bench and sitting next to him. Kuno looked at him as if looking for any injuries. After seeing that he wasn't wincing in his movements, she smiled at him. "Looks like you are no longer injured." Naruto nodded as he smiled at Kuno before he brought his hand up and patted her on the head. This caused her to puff out her cheeks in a pout. "Yeah, I'm fine now. Thanks for trying to help me out earlier." Kuno swatted at his hand as she did not like being treated as a child despite the fact that she was 1. Even if she was just a few years younger than he was. Yasaka smiled at the interaction between her daughter and the boy. She removed her hand and took a seat on the other side of the boy. Naruto noticed this and shifted his body so he could stare straight forward with Yasaka on his left and Kuno on his right. After a few moments of silence he spoke. "So what do you want with me?" Yasaka was surprised by how professional he sounded. A boy at his age acting more like an adult that has seen more than a normal person should have was a little disconcerting for her. She could understand being a bit mature during moments that required it. She had been teaching Kuno to do as such, but she made sure that her daughter had kept her innocent nature. This boy, however, seemed ready for a fight at a moment's notice. She could tell based on how tense he had become as he Saturday. It was a small bit of movement that no one would notice, but the slight minuscule pulse of chakra she felt had helped her notice. She calmly smiled at the boy as she brought her hand up and placed it on his cheek once more. You do not need to be so tense around us, Naruto. Naruto was trusting his instincts and senses on this and figured that these two are not a threat to him, but to make sure he got a second opinion. What do you think, Ramatu-chan? Kurama opened his eyes as he used his kid's senses to look at the woman. I sense no ill will coming from her. She seems trustworthy along with her kid as well. The others that were with her are another matter. They all seem suspicious about you despite what you tell them. Be wary, kid. We don't know where we are or who to trust. Trust your senses and your gut. They never led us wrong before. Naruto gave a mental nod as he relaxed a bit. He trusted Kurama and his instincts, and they were telling him that he could relax around Yasaka and Kuno, which was interesting since it took a bit of time before he fully relaxed around someone. Yasaka smiled as she noticed him visibly relax. She ran her thumb over his whiskers again and noticed that he stiffened when she did this. She would have asked, but she saw that his throat was slightly vibrating. She thought about what this could be until she heard a very faint purr. She now knew what it was. Her action was causing him to purr, and he was holding it in, to the best of his abilities. She smiled wider as he cleared his throat in order to cover it up, but she had heard it with her enhanced hearing. It is all right, Naruto. You do not have to hide it from us. We will not tell anyone. After he heard this, it was like a switch was forcibly flipped and he melted into her touch as he began to purr at her ministrations. He did not know why, but this woman was easily moving past his walls. Kuno was pouting more now, and she brought her hand up to his other cheek and began to do the same thing. Naruto at first was leaning into Yasaka's hand, but when Kuno began to do the same thing he felt himself melting at this. Regaining himself for a brief second, he shot his hands up and grabbed both their wrists, and gently moved them away from his cheeks. Please don't do that. I try not to let anyone other than people closest to me do that. Kuno pouted even more as she sat back down and crossed her arms. Yasaka smiled at how her daughter was acting around this boy. She took her hand back and put them on her lap. Very well, Naruto. To answer your earlier question, I merely wish to know what your intentions are in my territory. Naruto leaned back as he looked at Yasaka. As I said to all of you before, I came here by accident, and I don't even know where I am. But right now all I'm doing is having fun messing with all of the ones after me. He then realized something. Hey, how'd you find me anyway? I've been making everyone else go on a wild goose chase, and yet you just walk up to me like it was a normal thing. Yasaka smiled as she shifted her gaze from him to Kuno. I had brought Kuno here after you left as she wanted to go out and enjoy the day. It was by mere chance that we saw you here. Naruto deadpanned at this. How the hell do you just run into someone that everyone else thinks is an intruder? He sighed as he shook his head. That just sounds too weird. To just run into me like that. Yasaka nodded as she agreed that it was an unconventional and unrealistic way to run into someone, but it is how it is. Well, Naruto, I wish to know where you came from and the circumstances that led you to arrive here by accident. Naruto narrowed his eyes at her, but he still felt no ill intent or alternative motive. He sighed as he spoke. As I said before, I was practicing a jutsu at my home, and for some reason, it took me from my compound to here. I don't plan on doing anything in your territory other than leave and find my way home. Yasaka nodded as a boy his age would want to go home. Perhaps I can assist you. I am sure that you would want to go home to your parents as soon as possible. Her offer did have an alternative motive, as if she could meet the boy's parents. She could see that she and Kuno were not the last of their kind, and she would offer the parents safe haven with her. If they were on the run or in hiding, then they would most likely take the offer. Her hopes were however dashed when he spoke next. Don't have any parents to go back to. I'm an orphan. I've been one since I was born, and I have been living on my own ever since. Well, not mentioning Ramatu-chan, but he is not something to really talk about, especially since I can't fully trust her yet. Even if he mentally shook his head as he smiled sadly at the memory of him meeting his parents' chakra constructs. Yasaka felt her heart break at what he had said. She brought her arms up and brought Naruto's head into her, as she hugged him and ran her hand through his hair. To lose his parents the day of his birth. Living on his own for so long, no wonder he had to mature himself to such a degree. And to be ready for a fight at the first sign of trouble, he must have been hunted by the other factions for what he is for a long time. Naruto blushed at this as he did not expect to be hugged by a beautiful woman like this. He would have pushed away from this, but he felt at peace with her. It was like she needed to be part of his life in order to make it more whole. He felt Kuno join in on the hug and could not help but smile. How are they doing that? How can they both make me feel like I do when I hug both Ino and Hinata? I barely know them. Yasaka pulled back and looked into his eyes to see the look he had. His eyes conveyed longing, starving for something that he did not have or something that he wished he had more of. She placed her hand on his cheek once more, and she could not stop the loving look she gave him. Naruto felt his eyes moisten a bit, but he held them back. He would not cry. His tears are not meant for strangers that he just met, despite how they seemed to break down his walls and almost work their way into his heart in such a short amount of time. He was brought out of this as he felt a poke on his cheek. Turning his head, he saw Kuno still hanging off his back and smiling at him. What is it, Kuno? Kuno poked his cheek again, internally wanting to rub his whiskers again to make him purr, but poking was the closest she could do without going against what he asked. Will you play with us? Yasaka looked at her daughter in a small reprimanding look. However, the smile on her face betrayed what she really felt. Naruto smiled at the little girl and was about to respond, but he then sensed some more chakra signatures heading their way. Oh, he sighed as he knew that this moment he had with these two was now over. He got up from the bench with Kuno still hanging on his back. Sorry Kuno, but it seems that my time here is up. Both Kuno and Yasaka were confused about this until after a minute the older of the three foxes sensed that some of her subjects were heading their way at a decent pace. He was able to sense them from that far? How much had he gone through to have senses so sharp? Kuno teared up as she knew that this meant he was about to leave, and she didn't want to say bye to her new friend. She didn't get to say anything as she was picked up from under her arms and placed on the ground by her mother. Yasaka stood in front of Naruto as she spoke in a soft voice. You do not have to leave, Naruto. I could offer you a place with us. You do not have to be on the run anymore, and you could soon find this place to be your home. Naruto smiled at this. Had it been long ago, he would have immediately said yes, but he had others to think about, and they mattered more to him than a tempting offer. Sorry Yasaka, but most of your priests and Miko don't trust me, and I learned long ago that being in a place that has a lot of people that hate you would only end up with them attacking me. You seem to care about everyone here in Kyoto, but if I stay, then when they attack me, I won't hesitate to fight back, and based on how strong they feel, they would not last against me. He made sure not to mention that he had Ino and Hinata to worry about. Even if he did not like living in Konoha, they did, and he put their happiness before his own. They are what anchored him to the village, and he was fine with that. Yasaka and Kuno felt saddened at how he looked so resolute on leaving despite the small glimmer that Yasaka saw in his eyes. Yasaka looked the boy in the eyes before she brought the boy into another hug and ran her hand through his hair. She could not help but find the feel of his hair to resemble fur, and she enjoyed it. If you are sure about this, Naruto, I know that we have just met, but I can just tell that you are special. Will you promise me something? Feeling him nod, she asked, will you promise me that you will take care of yourself? And if ever you change your mind, my offer will always be there for you. Naruto nodded again, and despite the blush he had to once again be pressed against her, he hugged her back. After a few seconds, he moved out of her grasp only to be hugged by the youngest fox. He hugged Kuno as well for a minute but moved out of her grasp and looked down at her. Take care, Kuno. Seeing the girl nod, he took a few steps back and smiled at the two. Maybe I will see you two again. Both females nodded as Yasaka spoke. I look forward to the day we meet once more. Naruto could sense that the other signatures were almost there. He gave a foxy smile and waved see ya, and with that he jumped away at full speed in the opposite direction of the oncoming group. Yasaka turned her head to watch him leave and was impressed by the sheer speed he had. Kuno looked around as she could not keep up with it. Both turned around to see a group of Miko and priests come upon them, and with the leader of the group walking up to her. Lady Yasaka, are you alright? We felt a sudden spike of the intruder's chakra here and came as fast as we could. Seeing the lack of the fox they were looking for, he figured that the intruder had run off again. Were you able to see him and where he went? Yasaka shook her head as she spoke. No, I have not. She then looked to the group and gave an order. We are all to return to the shrine and resume our normal duties. If there is any sign of him causing trouble, we are to handle it then. Am I understood? The group were a little concerned about leaving the intruder loose in Kyoto, but Lady Yasaka was giving them an order, so they were to trust her word on this. They all nodded as they would obey the order. Yasaka smiled as she saw them all comply with her will. She and Kuno began making their way back to the shrine with the rest of the group. Naruto Uzumaki, I hope to see you again one day. She looked down at her daughter to see that she was looking around, most likely hoping to see a sign of the boy again. It seems that he has caught both of our interests. Both Yasaka and Kuno were now interested in the boy. Whether in a certain manner or another is yet to be seen. That night, Naruto was making his way through the streets, following his nose as he was tracking down Hinata's scent. He had spent the entire day keeping hidden and gathering intel himself. So far all the information he got was something he figured a tourist would want. Where one landmark was, where someone should go for lunch, how much a hotel would cost, a nice place to take a girl for a date. That last one was an interesting one as he thought that it would be nice to take the two girls there for a date, but it was the one before that caused him some issues. The money they were using was called yen. This confused him since the currency that he knew everyone used was called Rio. He couldn't wrap his mind around it as it didn't make any sense. He wasn't able to gain any more useful information, so when the sun went down, he figured it was time to catch up with the girls. After a bit of slow tracking, to make sure it didn't look suspicious for a boy his age being out at that time, he made his way to a house that looked like it hasn't been used in years. He used the darkness of the night to move closer to it, and tried the main door. Finding it unlocked, he moved inside and locked it behind him since he could smell both Ino and Hinata inside. He moved inside to see the two sitting in the middle of a room waiting for him. Sorry for taking a while, but keeping our chasers busy took me far from here. He sat down in front of the two and went into his squad leader role report. What did you find out? Both girls, knowing that business needed to come first, they told him their findings. The currency the people used was different from what they have, so this meant that they were still in their hinged clothing since they could not buy anything. The language they speak may be similar, but the writing they had seemed to be altered a bit, not enough to be unreadable but enough to cause them to pause. There were no shinobi to be seen even if they tried to see if any were hidden, but they both agreed there were none. The only warriors that they could find were the ones chasing them, and even then they were not wearing anything that a shinobi would wear or what could tell them what village they belonged to. It was Hinata's last bit of information that caused them all to be confused the most. When I used my Byakugan earlier this day, I had noticed that other than us and the Miko and priest after us, no one else has a trickle of chakra. Naruto looked at her with wide eyes. Sure, he wasn't the smartest one in the rookies, but even he knew that everyone had chakra. It was needed to live. Are you sure, Hinata? Could it be that it was just so small that you couldn't notice it? He knew that Hinata's dojutsu would not miss something like this since both had trained into making her sight better, but this was just so unbelievable. Hinata nodded. I am sure. None of the civilians had a drop of chakra. In fact, they did not have a chakra network at all. All of them were trying to rack their brain for an answer to this unnerving information. Ino shook her head to bring up something she needed the theme to see. We can think about that later. I was able to grab a map so we can try and figure out where we should go to head home. She brought out the map and laid it on the floor. Since they weren't using any lights, they used the shine of the moon to show the map. They all looked at it and tried to make sense of it. Naruto pointed at a spot on the map as he spoke. This map is local, so it doesn't really go far, but it should still help. Here, tapping his finger, I saw this name on one of the signs I walked past, so we should be around here. That should help us out. He thought about the trouble they were having just staying here and made a decision. We need to leave Kyoto. From what I know, that woman Yasaka said that she is the leader and guardian of it. And since they will be after us as long as we are here, we need to make sure that we leave it as soon as possible. Both girls nodded as they agreed with this decision. Okay, we should get some sleep and in the morning we will leave. Seeing them nod, he undid his henge and moved to the wall. He bit one of his fingers and quickly wrote a seal with his chakra blood and activated it. That should conceal us from anyone outside so we won't be disturbed tonight. He moved to lay against the opposite wall and looked away. Hinata and Ino felt embarrassed for what they were about to do, but they understood that the circumstances were not really in their favor. They both undid their henge, removed their headbands, sandals, and weapons pouch before they moved to lay on Naruto's tails. Naruto reached into his neck fur and pulled off his headband, as he always felt uncomfortable to have it on when he is a fox and sleeping. He left the necklace as it did not bother him at all. He wrapped a couple of his tails around the girls so they would stay warm as the three went to sleep and could only wonder how they would get home if they didn't know how far away they were. The three shinobi had woken up before the sunlight could even show itself to the residents of Kyoto, and were now making their way out. Ino and Hinata were riding on Naruto's back as he jumped rooftop to rooftop. From what he remembered from the map, the direction he was going would be the fastest way, and since he couldn't feel any chakra signatures nearby, he figured he was in the clear. Ino, who was sitting in front of the two riders, looked down at Naruto as she called out to him, Naruto, do you have a plan on what to do after we get out of Kyoto? Naruto shook his head as he spoke. No. But we need to get out so that we aren't chased constantly. He made it to an area that had no one around, so he paused and chose to use his senses to see if there were anyone following them. Thankfully no one was, and as far as he could tell no one would. Naruto. Hearing Hinata call out to him, he turned his head to see that she and Ino were staring off in the distance. Turning his head to where they were looking, his jaw dropped at the sight. Sitting in a large forest where he figured Kuno's house is, was a large golden kyubi staring straight at them. Naruto turned to face the kyubi and stood as straight as he could. He knew who it was and could not help but take in her appearance. Compared to him and Kurama, she had a more elegant form to herself. Not only that, but she seemed closer to resembling a fox. However, Kurama had a different thought. She is puny. Naruto's sweat dropped at the comment as he responded to it. Tuchan, not all of us are as big as you, and what do you mean she is puny? Based on sizes, I am the smallest out of the three of us. Are you smaller than her kid Kuno? Okay, second smallest. But either way, she is still big. If you say so. She is still small compared to us, Bijou. Yeah. Puff out your chest and brag. He got out of his mental conversation and looked straight into Yasaka's eyes. After they stared for a minute, he bowed his head in gratitude. Yasaka nodded at him, each of their messages being received. Thank you for your concern and offer, Yasaka. Take care of yourself, young Naruto. With that, he turned and ran away as Yasaka shrank back down to her human form. Hinata looked down at Naruto as she could tell that something happened between the two. Naruto, what happened back there, and what was that? That was the blonde woman from yesterday. Ino looked shocked at hearing this and turned her head to look back at where the kyubi was. Are you saying she is like you? Naruto shook his head. I don't think so. Her power felt different from what I and Tuchan have. Heck, from what I felt, her chakra feels way different from ours, even you. Hinata then asked, so what was that you did before we left? Naruto said nothing for a second before he responded, I was thanking her for showing concern for my well-being. Ino and Hinata felt that there was more to what he said, but right now they had to leave and felt that Naruto shouldn't be distracted. The three made their way out of Kyoto and into unknown territory, unsure of what they were getting into. 1 year later, Naruto was sitting on the floor of a decent-sized house, with papers scattered all around him as he stared at a large scroll of paper that had a large seal on it, much like the one he was testing back in Konoha. After the three had left Kyoto, they soon learned that they weren't anywhere near Konoha. In fact, they found out that they weren't even in the elemental nations. Somehow, the seal that Naruto was testing out had teleported them into a completely different world. They couldn't believe such a thing happened, as it was something that they thought only happened in the manga they sold back in Konoha's bookstore. After they finally accepted this, they spent a lot of time learning as much as they could about the world they were now in, and they just couldn't believe the major differences between their world and this one. With Ino's mind jutsu and Naruto's devil luck, they were able to manipulate their way into getting the house they now live in. They were able to get the house thanks to Naruto's immense amount of luck. The three had gone to a casino that they passed during their travels, and after learning that they needed to be older, they used a henge to get in and gamble. 1 coin was all Naruto needed to win the jackpot on a slot machine. Thankfully they had found that 1 coin on the ground, and after they won, they left the casino with enough money to live comfortably for a while. They chose not to keep playing since they only needed enough to get on their feet. Once they had settled into the house, they began making it as comfortable as possible for however long they would be staying in this world. Naruto even decided to let Yasaka know about him finding a place to stay. He was able to deduce the address she had with a little help from Ino, Kurama, and the map they still had. He felt that he should let her know about that since she was so concerned about his well-being. So they kept in contact through letters. Kuno also wrote to him saying she wanted to play with him again, but he had to tell her that he was too busy to do so, but that he would come to visit when he could. He was thankful to Yasaka for not sending anyone to check up on him. He felt like there was more to why she wouldn't do that, since it seemed like it would be something she would do for him, but he didn't question it. They also fixed another issue. They had found a way to at least communicate with Konoha. The idea was solid, but it had severe consequences that they almost paid. Flashback. On a rooftop void of any people stood the 3 ninjas, with the male blonde standing in the center. The 2 females stood at the side waiting for him to summon one of his toads. They would have offered to summon their own, but Naruto said that his summons had a more direct connection to Konoha. Naruto took a deep breath and began. He bit his thumb, smearing the red liquid on his palm, went through the hand signs, and slammed his hand on the ground, summoning jutsu. The 3 waited for the poof of smoke to appear, but surprisingly nothing happened. At least nothing visible happened. Ino and Hinata were confused about why nothing showed up, as Hinata asked Naruto, "Did you not do the hand signs right?" Ino shook her head. "That can't be it. It's the same hand signs we do when we summon. Maybe he didn't put in enough chakra." "Who are you trying to summon anyway?" Naruto got back up as he looked at his palm. "I was trying to summon Gamakichi." He could feel something off. He had put in the chakra needed, but something happened to him. Ino then shrugged her shoulders as she moved up close to where Naruto was. "Let me try." She bit her thumb to let out her blood and went through the same process Naruto did. Naruto's mind was going miles a second as he tried to figure out what was wrong until he realized something. He was winded. Tired? But I'm never tired. It was then he figured it out. Why it didn't work, and why he felt so drained. He shot his hand forward and grabbed Ino's wrist just before she could slam it on the ground. Thankfully the sudden action and the accidental force he put into his grip caused her to yelp instead of calling out the jutsu. Ino winced at Naruto's grip and looked at the boy with a glare, but it died when he saw a bit of panic in his eyes. "Naruto. What is it?" Naruto panted a bit as he looked at Ino. "Don't try to summon." He looked to Hinata. "You too, Hinata." The brunette tilted her head in confusion. "But why?" He took a deep breath before saying, "I had done it right, but the reason that it didn't work was that I didn't put in enough chakra for it to work." Ino huffed as she spoke. "Then why won't you let me do it?" "Because the amount of chakra that was used was enough to summon Gamabunta 100 times over." Both girls looked at him in shock. They had heard that it took a great amount of chakra to summon the Toad Boss. To hear that he used that amount and nothing happened told them that even if they did try, they wouldn't be able to use it either. Naruto continued, "Not only that, but it was like my chakra was pulled into the jutsu. If either of you had tried to summon, and the same thing happened." The girls understood the implication, and they now saw that Naruto looked slightly tired. If the amount of chakra taken had caused the chakra beasts like Naruto to feel tired, then with their chakra levels they would not survive. End the flashback. Thankfully, with Kurama's help, they were able to summon Gamakichi. Though their chakra levels had dropped thanks to that, they were able to send a message back to Konoha with an explanation as to how they ended up there. Naruto knew that he was in trouble with Tsunade since he was the one to test out an unknown seal without knowing what it was, but he knew for a fact that Jiraiya was never going to walk again after she kicked his ass and beat him within a centimeter from death. Heal him and do it all over again for showing him the seal without any proper context on what it was. They also learned that there was a sort of time displacement between where they were and where Konoha was. Meaning time flowed very differently. This would be a problem since on Konoha's end they were going much slower compared to where Naruto and his girls were. There was no real way of telling the rate between the two worlds since it was a headache trying to. On the bright side, Tsunade and Jiraiya, who was thankfully still alive after Tsunade was done with him, had sent over scrolls with instructions to continue their training so they didn't get sloppy. They had also told them that they would try and think of something to bring them back on their end while Naruto should try and do the same on his end. And that was what Naruto was doing, but he dared not test it because he wasn't sure if it would have the same effect or if it would even send them back to their own world. And reverse summoning wouldn't work due to the chakra requirement, and the fact that it would be much harder for Ino and Hinata since they couldn't directly contact their summons, so they had less chance of being reverse summoned. But Naruto would not give up. He didn't care how long it took, he was going to get Hinata and Ino home. He was brought out of his musing when he heard the front door open. Looking up, he saw that Ino and Hinata were back. Ino was wearing a simple purple shirt with tight jeans, while Hinata was wearing a white sundress with shorts underneath. Can't think of any casual clothes at the moment. Ino was wringing her hands as she looked anywhere but at him. Naruto didn't need his senses to tell that she had done something that she knew he wasn't going to like. Ino, what happened? Ino kept shifting her eyes everywhere until Hinata placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked at the Hyuga to see a stern look in her eyes. She sighed as she finally looked at Naruto. I messed up. Monday. Ino, out of all the things that you could have said, why did you have to say that? Come on, Naruto, I said I was sorry and I panicked. Turns out that during Ino and Hinata's outing, an officer had stopped them and asked them why they weren't in school. Now for a couple of trained kunoichi, they could have easily gotten away and never be seen by the man again. However, they were trying to keep a low profile and did not want to garner any attention to themselves. As such, they had chakra suppressant seals on them so they would not use their chakra. Not only that, they still had their gravity seals so they would be sluggish. Also, there were people around, so it was not like they could just attack an officer without someone getting a picture on their cell phones. Ino had been the one to speak, saying that they were off on that day, which got the officer to ask which school they went to since he was sure that there were no schools around that had the day off that day. Ino felt nervous now since her bluff was falling apart fast. Her eyes darted around and saw a sign that had the word academy on it. She pointed at the academy and said that they themselves had the day off from this academy since they had some business that took priority. The officer was skeptical and said that he would be checking in with the dean in order to validate her claim. Thankfully, he would not do it at that moment, but he would do it the next day. The three ninjas then went into the school as if they were visitors and met with the dean. With Naruto sealing off the rooms so they wouldn't be detected by anyone, Ino entered the man's mind and created records of them being transfer students. That would validate them not being in school, as it would make it seem that their business had to deal with them transferring in. An interesting bit of info was that the man that they thought was the dean was a man filling in for the actual dean. Apparently, the real dean was off on overseas business. This didn't hinder them as they still did what was done. This all led to now. The following week was when they had to start, and Naruto was not happy about this. The three were walking through the main gate, each wearing the school uniform, and something that they noticed straight away was that there were no males around. Naruto felt very uncomfortable since all the girls were staring at him. Ino, do you know why there are no other guys here? Ino looked chuckle sheepishly as she messed with the hem of her skirt. Well, this is Hinata sighed as she spoke, this is an all-girls school, Naruto. Naruto stopped dead in his tracks as he heard this. Ino and Hinata stopped a few steps ahead of him and looked back. Naruto had an eye twitch and felt like he was about to scream. Ino, why am I a guy, coming with you to an all-girls school? Ino cleared her throat as she tried to stay calm, explaining to her boyfriend that hated school and could very well leave without anyone able to stop him. Actually, the dean had planned on making this a co-ed school soon but was unsure when to do so. While I was setting us up to attend, I may have pushed the plan forward and had you be the first ever male to attend co-academy. And there it was. Naruto was now the sole male in a school full of females. Jiraiya would be screaming with envy at what he was now in, but Naruto had a feeling that he was about to find chaos here than anywhere else. Above the three, in a room that had a good view of the main gate, were two female students watching the newcomers. One had long brilliant crimson hair and a figure many females would kill for. The other had short hair cut into a bob cut with glasses framing her face. She may not be as curvy as the other, but she gave off the stoic form of beauty that made her just as appealing. They had their eye on the three as the redhead spoke. Do you feel anything from them, Sona? The now named Sona shook her head. No, nothing. But there is something odd about them. I can't put my finger on it, but there is more to them than what we see. I am curious how they can be attending if there was no news of them being transferred in until just a few days ago. Could they be spies from the fallen angels? Sona contemplated this for a second. It seems too obvious. The fallen angels would have tried to be more subtle in their attempts, hide their tracks, but these three didn't. It was like they were just meant to come here. Even our Phil and Dean said that he was expecting them, and there were no traces of magic or hypnotism around him. I will have my peerage keep an eye on them, Rias, as should yours. Rias nodded as she eyed the three. If they aren't spies, then I need to see if they have a sacred gear or any hidden power. If they do, they could help me get out of that marriage proposal. I'm running out of time. Naruto was able to sense a small burst of desperation coming from inside the building they were going into, but at the moment, he didn't care. Unless it caused him, or his girls, problems, he would leave it be for now. Classroom. Alright class, we have 3 new students joining us today. One of which will be the very first male attending co-academy. The teacher then turned to the 3 newcomers as she gestured to the class. You may now introduce yourselves. Ino started out, putting her hands behind her back and smiled. I'm Ino Yamanaka. Hinata bowed as she went next. My name is Hinata Hyuga. Naruto would have gone, but he felt very nervous at all the stares at him. While Ino and Hinata were introducing themselves, everyone had their eyes on him. He gulped as he rubbed the back of his head. Hi. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Once he finished, he saw that all the girls started whispering to each other. Can you believe they are letting a boy come to our school? I know. Do you think he is dangerous? Better stay away or he might get you pregnant. Naruto's sweat dropped at that last one, but interestingly enough those were the only negative comments he got. He's so handsome. Do you think he is single? Look at those muscles. Naruto brought his hand up to pull his short sleeve down as much as he could as he felt embarrassed at that last comment. He is so shy. He's cute. Maybe we should talk to him later. Are those whiskers real or did he draw them on? The girl that said that lost tone said it loud enough that the other girls heard it, and they all had the same thought. I want to pet those whiskers. Naruto now felt like he was a sheep that was just thrown into a wolf's den. Power to destroy forests, and he is terrified of females ganging up on him. Oh Kit, you have a lot to learn. Laying on sloped grass were three boys looking up at the sky with only one thing on their minds. Man, I want to fondle some. I can agree with that. Fondle some big, soft, beautiful. The three boys were Matsudo, Motohama, and Issei Hayato. These three are students of the prestigious Ko Academy, a school that was once a private all-girls school that was converted into a co-ed school only a few years ago. They enrolled in this school as freshmen when they figured that the ratio from male to female would be massive. Matsuda, Motohama, why did we enter this school as freshmen? Motohama adjusted his glasses as he spoke. What kind of question is that? You know why. Issei jumped to his feet and pumped his fist in the air as he shouted out, Tio, get our very own harem. The three were posed as if they thought they were cool with Matsuda shouting out, hell yeah, we were going to have unprotected sex with hot chicks and then never call them again. How is he not in jail already? A group of girls that were in the middle of a training run passed overhead, which caused the three to stare at their asses as if their eyes were magnetized to them. Issei then slumped as he said, so many girls in this school, and not one of them want to be with us. Why? Motohana adjusted his glasses again as he gave a sort of lecture to the question. It's because our enemies are strong. Like Kibayuto from Class 2C. He has one of the highest marks in his class, he has the looks of a male model and is like the Prince Charming of all the girls here. Matsuda grit his teeth. Oh, I want to beat the crap out of him and see if any girl wants to be with him after that. Issei fell to his hands and knees with an aura of depression at hearing this just because he is hot, sexy, cool, so much smarter and so much better than us. He gets all the ass he wants. As if the world wanted to mock them, Kiba walked by with a couple of girls asking him if he wanted to join them in karaoke. He respectfully declined their offer as the girls swooned over him, and for some reason, he seemed to have sparkles around him as if he came out of a fantasy. Seeing this scene caused the three to silently curse his very existence. Issei slammed his fist into the ground. If only he didn't transfer here, we would get all the... Motohana adjusted his glasses again. He does that a lot. No, you're wrong. There is another. The other two boys looked at him in confusion before they remembered the other popular boy. Even if he was popular for a slightly different reason. School building, second floor, he was facing off with the biggest challenge he ever had. He had faced off with Hunter Nin, bloodthirsty bandits, a sadistic Sannin, and against a massive Kyuubi, but now he had nothing against what stood in front of him. How the hell did Sasuke even deal with this kind of thing? 16-year-old Naruto had a bead of sweat as he took a step back from the dreaded horror of some men, fangirls. And not just fangirls, a fangirl MOB. And standing at the front of it was one of his biggest antagonists, Aika Kiryu. Aika had brown hair tied into pigtails that fell to the side of her head, golden yellow eyes that were framed by red-rimmed glasses. He didn't know why, but she seemed to find enjoyment in tormenting him by sexually harassing him every chance she had. In fact, she usually set up these mobs to chase him all around the school. He remembered the mobs back in Konoha that would attack him if they caught him, but he felt like if these mobs captured him, he would lose something other than his life. At it again, Aika? Oh, first name basis are we? She smiled coyly at him as she crossed her arms under her bust. I didn't know you loved me so much. Now are you too? This girl is going to be the death of me. He tensed his muscles as he got ready. What makes you think that you and your crew are going to get me this time? Her smile was almost sadistic as she brought her hand up to cup her cheek. You can't get away from us forever. Those whiskers will be ours. She had a glint in her eyes that said that she was about to begin. Naruto saw that glint and got ready. She brought her hand up. He shifted his foot. The girls moved their dominant foot forward, and it began. Let's get him, girls. Naruto turned and ran. Catch me if you can. Why do I have to challenge them to this? Because deep down you enjoy the attention. I don't need your input on this too, Chan. And so the chase began. Something the teachers had gotten used to at this point, since this became a common occurrence ever since he had arrived. Besides, the girls know to behave when they have to, so it was okay for them to have a little fun with this chase. Besides, it was thanks to these chases that the girls grew more physically fit since they never caught him, and they would always try again some time later. Back with the perverted trio. Issei was now in a fetal position as he cried with those two at this school, we'll never get any. Motohana patted his shoulder. It's the sad truth. He also had tears coming out of his eyes. Matsuda however looked at his watch. Oh crap, it's almost time. The other two boys looked at him in confusion as they asked at the same time, time for what? Matsuda looked at his friend and smiled as if he had suddenly been fused with a chimp. I found the perfect spot to watch the of the kendo club. Issei suddenly realized something when he heard the word club. Oh crap, that's right. The swimming club. We gotta go if we want to see them get all wet. Matsuda shook his head. Come on man, we already spied on them. It's time for something new. Motohana nodded. I have to agree with him. There are many choices of an ass out there. We must appreciate all types of them. Issei was conflicted as he agreed with them, but he felt that they should stick with what they had. Shaking his head, he stood resolute. I will stick with the what. You guys can go enjoy the kendo club. We can compare later. The three nodded as they went off to their destination. Back with Naruto. He was now stuck between a rock and a steel wall. Behind him was the mob of fangirls that would do anything to get their hands on him and his face, while in front of him was another one of his antagonists in this school, Akino Himejima. Era, so excited to see me that you ran straight into my arms. Naruto looked at one of the so-called school beauties. She had been one of the people he thought was in a manner like he used to be in his very early years. Someone that hid pain behind a mask, but unlike him, she never dropped it. When he became a genin, he stopped caring about keeping up a smile. He would do what he wanted, and if the villagers didn't like it, then they can shove off. But from what he saw and felt, Akino still held on to her pain and hid it every day. He could feel her self-loathing, and it bugged him that she had such a thing, since from what he could tell she was a nice girl, albeit extremely sadistic. Though whenever she would chase after him, at a much lesser degree, she seemed to enjoy herself a bit, and almost forget her self-loathing. This was an issue with him to a small degree, however, because she was much more forward to what she would like to do with his face. Ofufu, why not fall into my arms so I can protect you from the evil girls after you? Afterwards, we can have some alone time. She licked her lips as she spread out her arms as if he would jump right into them. Naruto was stuck. Mob behind him, sadistic girl in front of him. Now what? If you weren't so keen on staying hidden, you could have gotten away already. Can't. That girl that smells like cats has chakra. Yasaka told me that she hasn't sent anyone to check up on me, so she could be from someone else. With her following me, we can't let her know that I have chakra. The seals I put on me, Ino and Hinata, are keeping us hidden, and I would like it to stay that way. Che, your choice. Naruto looked back and forth and saw that they were closing in on him. Aika had a gleam in her eyes as she saw victory, and those whiskers coming ever so closer. You can't get away from us this time, Naruto. Naruto was now panicking until he saw his salvation and made his choice. You'll never take me alive. And he ran towards the side and jumped out of a conveniently open window. The girls gasped at seeing him jump from the second floor and all ran to the window to see if he was alright. Instead of seeing something gruesome, they watched as he flipped in the air until he reached a tree, stretched out his arms, grabbed a branch, spun around it once, let go, did an acrobatic air spin, and land on his feet as if he was in the Olympics. Naruto got out from under the tree, looked up, and did a showman's bow. The girls all cheered and applauded at the display of acrobatics as they watched him walk away. Aika clicked her tongue. You win this time, Naruto, but I will claim those cheeks of yours. Akino watched the boy leave and licked her lips. You are becoming more delicious the more I watch you, Fufu. She decided that she would go meet with Rias as she was to meet with her and Sona. Naruto brought his hands up behind his head as he thought about what to do for the rest of the break. He made his decision and decided to go meet up with Hinata, with Issei. Issei was hiding in the bushes next to the fence that surrounded the pool. He couldn't help but drool at all the girls that were swimming in skin-tight swimsuits that showed off the figures of all the girls there. His attention would always go to the girls that pulled themselves out of the pool, and he could see the drops of water slide off there, and his eyes traced the path of some that moved slowly to the side. It wasn't until he caught sight of one of the beauties of the school. He could not help but watch as she took off her swimming cap and her long luscious hair swung around her. She had a figure that rivaled Rias Gremory and Akino Himejima. Her personality would make any guy fall head over heels for her. Her shy nature would just want you to sweep her away as if you were her knight in shining armor. And her eyes looking the way they do make you want to just hold her hand and guide her around despite that she is able to see. Hinata Hyuga, one of the beauty queens of the school, despite her always having lavender skin-tight bands on her wrists and ankles, she was one of the pinnacles of beauty to the boys. Issei wanted to shout out and scream in joy at seeing her come out of the water, but he did not want to get caught. Steam came out of his nose as he enjoyed the sight of her as they bounced a bit as she walked. This show is just about that, isn't it? Oh man, I'm so happy to be born a guy. All hail. Enjoying the view? Issei didn't look back when he heard the voice and harshly whispered, "Shoo. Do you want to get caught?" It took him a few seconds to recognize the voice. He would have turned his head to see the owner of the voice, but he suddenly felt pain around his head as fingers dug into his skull. Oh, whoa, let go. Oh, I will, but not here. All the girls of the swimming club all stopped as they heard the shouts of pain and looked over to see Naruto gripping Issei by the head. Instead of the girls screaming out that a pervert was spying on them, they felt embarrassed that one of the two princes of the school was here and had sight of their bodies. Hinata noticed this and puffed out her cheeks a bit. She may be used to the attention Naruto got, but she would still get fits of jealousy. She looked at Naruto and saw that he was smiling at her. She smiled back at him and blushed when he winked at her. The wink caused some of the girls to swoon as they thought that he winked at them. It was one of the reasons they swooned for him. Despite actions like that would cause them to think he was just a creep. It is when they actually confronted him that they saw he was extremely shy and self-conscious when surrounded by girls. They thought it was appealing and adorable. His whiskers helped in that fact as well. They watched as Naruto dragged one of the perverted trio away by his head off to who knows where. Meanwhile, Matsuda snuck through the bushes towards his peeking spot with Motohana right behind him. Come on, man. It's almost time for them to change and we don't want to miss those beautiful of Murayama. Don't forget those luscious legs of Kate's. Matsuda nodded as he got to the hole that led into the changing room for the kendo club. He waved his friend over and they both looked through the hole to see the kendo club walking in. Oh man, here we go. Motohana brought his finger to his lips in a shushing motion. You don't want them to hear us. Both boys had their eyes wide as they saw the club getting ready to take off their uniforms. Come on, come on. Just a little more. Suddenly both of their eyes felt immense pain as they pulled back from the hole and held their eye as they shouted in agony. Arg, my eye, my eye. Motohana was rolling on the ground as his glasses fell off his face and showed that the lens had a small hole in it. Thankfully no glass entered his eye, but as he grabbed what was thrown into their eye he saw that it was a small piece of an eraser. Wah! Inside the changing room with her arms stretched out that had a purple skin-tight band was a girl that had long blonde hair that covered her right eye, teal eyes that looked as if they belonged at a jeweler, and a figure that was the envy of many girls. This was another of the school beauty queens, Ino Yamanaka. Ino smirked at the hole as she knew they were there when they were coming to peek at them and was waiting for the chance to do that. Kates walked up to Ino and asked what was that, Ino? Ino turned to look at the girl and smirked. That was a couple of perverts that got what they deserved. Hearing this, the rest of the kendo club grew angry and were redressing themselves in their kendo uniforms and grabbing their kendo swords to go out and deliver their own punishment before the perverts ran away. But much to their shock, someone else had come and made it easier for them. The perverts that were spying on them were tied to the practice posts with the third of the perverted trio with them in the center. Tying them up was the first prince of Ko, Naruto. Issei was struggling to get out of his bonds, but the rope was tight. Why the hell do you have rope anyway? Naruto finished the knot and straightened up and looked at Issei with his foxy grin. To tie up perverts like you. Issei wiggled more as he whimpered out, "Grr, damn it. You have your own harem, why can't you let us have ours? What makes you different from us?" Naruto, with his foxy grin still on his face, patted Issei on the head. "Because my head isn't always full of, senpai. And I don't have a harem." Issei, Motohana, and Matsuda glared at him before shifting their gaze at the oncoming kendo club and the blushes they had as they saw him. "Yeah, right. You have half the schoolgirls after you." Naruto turned around to see the kendo club coming towards him and the other three. "Hey girls. Sorry for the disturbance." The entire kendo club blushed at the smile he gave them as Murayama spoke. "It's fine, Naruto. Thanks for getting them before they got away," she said as she did her best to hide her blush. Ino only sighed as she already got used to this, and knew that she couldn't do anything to stop it since she knew just how great Naruto was. Besides, she knew Naruto well enough to know that he would not ever cheat on her or Hinata, though she couldn't help the little voice in her head that there might be some of these girls that might try and worm their way into his heart. But they would have to get through her first, not to mention Hinata. High walls for any other girl to try and scale. Naruto nodded as he looked at Ino. "By the way, nice shot, Ino." Ino cocked her hip as she placed her hand on it, and smirked. "Did you expect anything less?" Naruto chuckled and shook his head before he looked back at the three tied-up students. "Reminds me of the bell test." He put his hands in his pockets, and chose that it was time for him to go. "Well, enjoy your practice, dummies." "Bye, Naruto." The kendo club said in unison before they turned to the three with evil smirks. The three began to sweat as Issei whimpered out, "Mercy?" Screams of pain could be heard throughout the campus. Occult Research Club room. Rias, Akino, Sona, Tsubaki, and Kaneko were sitting in the main room of the Occult Research Club with Rias and Sona looking out the window towards where they heard the screams of pain. Rias was the first to speak. 3 years and nothing to show for it. "I don't know why we thought that there was something hidden behind those three." Sona adjusted her glasses as she nodded. "True, but I can't help but feel that we are still missing something about them, especially Uzumaki." Rias looked to Sona with a forlorn look. "I've had my peerage tail him all this time, and so far he has shown no relation to the supernatural. From our observations, he is just a normal boy." "Yuffuf, normal isn't something I would call him, Rias." Rias sighed as she looked back to her queen. "Okay, apart from being physically fit and acrobatic, we haven't sensed any power coming from him." She looked to Kaneko, who was munching on a cookie, "And then there was that time you thought you felt chakra coming from him, which led me to believe that he was from the Yokai faction sending in an agent to scout out the area, but you then said that it wasn't from him." Kaneko stopped munching on her cookie as she spoke in her monotone voice. "Felt chakra, he was in area." She went back to her cookie. "Yes. And you said he smelled like a fox." "Still smells like a fox, possible pet, but no chakra." Rias sighed in disappointment. "If he was a rogue yokai or had a sacred gear, I would have asked him if he would join my peerage." Sona looked to her friend. "Why don't you still add him? With his acrobatics, he could be a useful knight." Rias thought about it but shook her head. "Maybe, but for now, I need to focus on gaining an edge over Riser, and I have someone in mind for that." Sona looked to Rias with a questioning look. "Oh? And who would that be?" "Issei Hayadu." Sona looked at Tsubaki for details of the boy, and she went through his general info from his grades, status, opinions from other people about him. From what Tsubaki stated, there wasn't anything of interest about him. "May I ask why him?" Rias looked out the window. "I have a feeling about him." Tsubaki was the one to speak next, much like Uzumaki. "Yes, but unlike Naruto, I can feel something coming from Issei, which is a safer gamble on getting something more useful." Sona moved away from the window to stand by her queen. When will you recruit him? Soon. Sona knew Rias and knew how desperate she was about this, and had an idea of what she was going to do. Rias, be careful. The method for you recruiting this time could very well come back at you. Rias sighed again. I know, but this is the most secure way that I would receive his cooperation. I will repay him later if I can. Sona nodded as she and Tsubaki began to make their way out. As she opened the door she looked back. Oh, if you are truly interested in Uzumaki, I would suggest you recruit him soon. If you don't, I might add him to my peerage. Rias and Akino turned to face Sona with a look of surprise on their faces. Akino cupped her cheek as she smiled. Era, interested in our school's whiskered prince, are we? Sona pushed her glasses up as she spoke. He intrigues me. He and those two he arrived with. They are a mystery, a puzzle that is impossible to solve, and I wish to know the picture they make once solved. She then chose to leave as she thought about her own findings of not only Naruto Uzumaki but Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga. Her findings were nothing. There was nothing about where they came from, no guardian's name, there wasn't even any record of any of them living before they arrived at the school. They were a complete mystery. At first, she had assumed that they might be from one of the other factions sent here to cause disarray, but after 2 years of observing them, it became less likely. Another thought was that they might be refugees running from a faction or possibly human issues, but their records were too scarce to follow up on that. It was like they just popped into existence. Who are you three? Back inside the occult room, Rias shook her head as she couldn't believe Sona's interest in the three. Sure, she would not mind having the three, but power is what she needs right now. She paused as she heard crunching, so she turned her head to see Kaneko continue eating her cookies. She then felt the need to ask Kaneko, where did you get those cookies anyway? They aren't the ones we usually have here. Kaneko finished the cookie she had before answering. Naruto gave them to me, said it was a treat for a kitty. Rias and Akino looked at Kaneko in shock as Rias asked warily, did he know? Kaneko shook her head as she remembered when he said that. It had made her panic as well, but his action after that calmed her down. Kaneko reached behind her and pulled out a pair of fake cat ears. He put them on me and walked away. The older girl sighed in relief while also sweat dropping at the actions of this odd boy. After school, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata were leaving the campus together as the two girls had finished their club activities. Normally Naruto would have a smile on his face as they left since he hated being in a school, but at the moment, he had a scowl instead. Hinata looked at Naruto with a questioned gaze. Is something wrong, Naruto? Naruto dropped his scowl as he looked to Hinata. He would have said that there was nothing wrong, but he knew that there were some unfriendly people in town. We have a problem. Ino and Hinata could hear the tone in his voice and got serious. Both turned to look forward as if nothing was wrong. Ino asked what kind of problem. Naruto shook his head as, at the moment, the issue was not after them. The kind that I hope passes by. For a while now, I have felt a lot of negativity from several spots around town. I haven't looked into them, but the amount of greed and malice they have bugs me. Ino shifted her eyes to Naruto, and why haven't you told us about it? Because they haven't done anything. No attacks, no confrontations. They are just going about the town. I figured that if they aren't doing anything, then we shouldn't look for a fight. Ino and Hinata stared at Naruto as if waiting for one last thing to come from him. Naruto chuckled as he rubbed the back of his head. Okay. I made a shadow clone at our house, placed concealment seals, and sent it off to follow one of them. They are holed up in that abandoned church for some reason and haven't moved for weeks. So why are you in such a mood right now? Because one of them is close. Ino and Hinata tensed up as if ready for a fight. Relax, they aren't coming our way or even moving. Hinata looked worriedly at Naruto. Shouldn't we go check it out then? Naruto shook his head. Remember, we are trying to keep a low profile. If we go off and attack them, or if they catch wind of us, we would have to leave town again, and after all the work we put into the potential way home, it would be delayed longer. They were now in a park, standing next to a fountain as Ino and Hinata stopped, causing Naruto to turn and face them. Hinata sighed as she looked at Naruto. You have been working on a way home all this time with no time for yourself. We go to school, we go home, and you immediately go to work on that seal. You need to accept that we might not ever go home. Naruto shook his head at this. I can't stop. I made a promise that I would get you two home as soon as possible. Ino put her hands on her hips with a scrutinizing look. And what about you? Naruto looked at the two in front of him as he smiled. My home is where you two are. When you go, I go with you. Hinata stepped closer and placed her hand on his cheek as she looked at him lovingly. And what makes you think it isn't the same with us? Naruto's eyes widened in shock as his gaze shifted between the two. But what about your families? Your sister, Hinata. Hinata smiled as she got closer and pressed her lips on his. Breaking the kiss, she spoke. We know that they are safe, and even if we can't see them, we can still communicate with them. Our place is with you, Naruto. Hinata took a step back, which gave Ino the chance to step forward, gently grabbed his face, and guided his lips to hers. After a second they broke the kiss before Ino spoke. We know you will get us back to Konoha, but you can't just spend every bit of free time on it. Besides, they are working on it too, so relax. Naruto sighed. Fine, I will relax a bit after the clone comes back from watching the church. Ino and Hinata nodded, with the former asking, so any idea on what these people want? Naruto shook his head. No idea. Only that they are waiting for someone to arrive before they do something. Hinata sat down on the fountain edge and asked, what about the closest one? Naruto could only shrug as he wasn't keeping tabs on that one. Don't know. But they seem to be staying there for the time being. Elsewhere. Will you go out with me? Issei couldn't believe it. This beautiful girl had just asked him out. What else could he say other than of course? Watching the pervert, and this disguised fallen angel was Kaneko, as she has been tasked with keeping tabs on the boy. Fallen angel's target confirmed. Rias sat on the couch in the ORC room with a chessboard on the table. She had heard from Kaneko that the fallen angels had made contact with Issei the previous day. This was both good and bad news. Good news because it meant that there might be something about Issei that had caught the fallen angel's attention, and bad news because she had no idea what they really wanted with the boy. She moved one of the chess pieces as Akino looked over the board for her next move. Kaneko, do you know what they plan on doing? Kaneko shook her head no. Too far away couldn't hear. Rias bit on her thumb's nail as she thought about what to do next. Her thought about sending someone in her peerage to watch them crossed her mind, but she wasn't sure how long she could keep them on the job. If she had more info about the interaction, she might have come up with a better plan, but due to Kaneko being too far away to hear what was spoken, info was lacking. She looked to her rook and asked Kaneko, may I ask you to watch over Issei as long as you can to make sure that he remains unharmed? Kaneko thought about the request before she nodded okay. Akino moved her bishop as she looked to her king before asking, would it not be wise to bring him into our fold now? It may save us from having trouble later on as well as put him under our protection. Rias bit her nail harder as she reached out with her free hand. Yes it would, but it would also alert the fallen angels that we are aware of them. I want to draw them out as far as I can before we make our move. She grabbed one of her pawns before moving it forward. As Rias finished her move, the door opened up to reveal Sona and Tsubaki waking in. Sona walked up to the three, nodding to Kaneko and Akino before looking at Rias. I have some new information about Uzumaki that might aid you in recruiting him. Rias looked up to Sona with a smile, but it dropped when she thought about the boy. She shook her head. Thank you for bringing me information that may aid me, but it turns out that the fallen angels are making their move. Sona nodded in understanding as she knew that invaders in their territory had a bit more precedence than recruiting a potential new member. Very well, I shall withhold this information for now, but may I ask what is it that you plan to do about them? Rias sighed as she leaned back on her couch. The fallen angels have made contact with Issei, but we are unaware of what they really plan to do with the boy. I plan on having one in my peerage keep an eye on them and be ready to jump in case something happens. Sona nodded in understanding. I still think that it is unwise in using him as bait to draw the enemy out. If something were to go wrong you may lose said bait. Rias nodded. I am aware of that, but sometimes it is necessary to draw in the enemy to know their motives and remove them if necessary. Yes, but the bait is someone that is not part of the supernatural and a normal human. I would recommend that you take extra precautions when playing this game of cat and mouse. Rias nodded and suddenly felt the need to change the subject into something a bit more positive. What was the info that you wanted to give me about Naruto? Tsubaki stepped forward and answered for her king. She brought up a clipboard and looked over the info that they had gathered during the day. It came to our attention that he will be having an outing with both Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga this Sunday. This info was confirmed by several students that had heard the girls speak about this, with several other females asking if they would be allowed to join in the outing. From what you had said previously from your observations of Uzumaki, he has never gone out to enjoy the town, and despite being invited to many different events he had always said that he had an important task that he must do. We believe that if you are to run into him during this outing, you may be able to get close to the three and possibly learn more about him. Rias went wide-eyed at this. Throughout the time they had observed him, Naruto had never gone out to enjoy the city. Rias had thought about the running into him while he was out to meet with him and learn as much as she could. But not once had he ever been found out and about. Now here she learns that he is actually going to be out, and this information has been corroborated from several sources. Do you know what their plan is? Sona shook her head. Unfortunately, it was not stated where they would be going, only that they will be out for most of the day. Rias went back to biting her nail as she thought about what she could do about this. As Sona watched Rias think about her next move, she noticed the chessboard and saw what Rias was planning for the game. She had set up her pawn to bait in the enemy knight or the bishop in 2 moves. However, if either of them were to make a move to close in on it, the rook or king would be there to jump in. However, there was one more move the enemy could do that might cause issues. The enemy rook on the far side of the board could also make a move, but it would find itself set up as well, but in a different manner. Meanwhile, Naruto was laying on the couch trying not to eye the large seal that he had been working on for so long. He had promised Ino and Hinata that he would take a break from it, and now he was trying his best to take a break. He lifted his head when he heard the bathroom door open. He saw both Ino and Hinata come out clad in towels wrapped around their body and head. Ino and Hinata looked to see Naruto laying on the couch as they made their way to him. Hinata sat by his head before lifting it and placed it on her lap. She smiled down at him before she ran her hand through his hair. What are you thinking about? Naruto smiled up at Hinata as he answered her question. Just trying to calm my mind so I don't think about the seal. Ino leaned on the backrest of the couch and looked down at him. It shouldn't be that hard, Naruto. Why don't you think of something more entertaining, like the news that spread throughout the school today? Naruto sighed as he remembered what he heard during the school day. Honestly, I wouldn't have believed it if it wasn't for the fact that when he kept spouting out that he got a girlfriend, I felt that he wasn't lying. Who would have thought that someone like Issei would get a girlfriend? Hinata stopped running her hand through his hair before she flicked him on the nose. Naruto. Anyone can find someone to be with. Despite his eccentric behavior, he also deserves to be with someone. Ino nodded before she made a face. He is the more tolerable of the three perverts. The other two would need someone very desperate to be with. Hinata looked at Ino with a reprimanding look. Ino brought her hands up in surrender. Okay, they can find someone too. Unknown to her, the sudden movement of her surrender caused the towel around her to loosen before it fell off, leaving her bare to the other two. Naruto's face turned red as he turned his head to look the other way. Ino felt the loss of her towel before looking down to see that she was now exhibiting herself to them. She smiled as she saw Naruto's reaction before she picked up her towel and rewrapped it around herself. She then moved around the couch until she was in front of it and stood over Naruto. She then bent down and turned his head to look at her before she brought him into a passionate kiss. She caressed his whiskers, causing him to purr into the kiss, which made her smile. She pulled away and smiled at him. You need to stop getting so embarrassed when stuff like that happens. We live together, so it only makes sense that it would happen at times. Even Hinata doesn't blush like that as often. Naruto, in all his maturity, stuck his tongue out at her. I can't help but feel embarrassed. It's just how I react. Ino gained a coy smile as she said, oh, and you laying your head on Hinata's bare thighs isn't something to be embarrassed about. Naruto felt his blush darken as he grabbed a pillow and covered his face with it, which caused the girls to giggle. Sunday morning, Kuniko was in an alley just outside of Issei's house, keeping an eye out to make sure that she would be able to keep an eye out. She had arrived only 30 minutes ago and looked at her phone to see that it was 8:30 in the morning. She kept eyeing the window that led into Issei's room, and for some reason, she had a sinking feeling. Especially since the shades were open and despite it being the weekend and someone like Issei would sleep in, the sun should have caused some sort of movement. She was brought out of her thoughts when she heard the front door open and out walked the parents. She took a step back into the shadows of the alley and used her hearing to hear what they were saying. Issei's mother and father had a smile on their faces as they came out and discussed the progress their son had made. Miki was beaming as she gushed over it. Can you believe our useless son had finally found a girl that actually wants to be with him? Goran nodded as he cried happy anime tears. Our boy might finally gain some worth in this world. After he wiped his tears away, he looked to his wife. So did he tell you where he is taking Yuma today? Miki shook her head. No, he didn't say anything, but he was so excited when he left that he almost forgot his cell phone. Goran shook his head. Hopefully she will become a very good influence on him. True. Kuniko went wide-eyed as she heard this. Oh no. In town, Rias was walking around town looking for her targets, but she had no idea where to start. Throughout the week, she had tried to see if she could hear anything about their outing, but they were very tight-lipped about it. This didn't deter her, as it was still morning, and she had all day to find them. Suddenly her phone began to ring. Picking it up, she saw it was Kuniko and answered it immediately. Kuniko? What's wrong? Issei already left. He's on a date. Rias stopped in her tracks as she realized what this meant. They had no idea where Issei was or where they were going on the date. There were many issues with this, as they could have taken the train to go to the next town over, or they could still be in this town. If she could pray, she would for the latter. Kuniko, call everyone and have them search for Issei. What about you? Rias bit her nail before she answered. I will still look for Naruto. This could be the only chance to get Issei, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata. But Issei needs to be found. He is the one that has the fallen angel's attention, so he is the one at risk. Got it. Rias hung up the phone as she sighed. I hope they find him. She began to power walk now, as her nerves were now getting worse. And I hope I can find them. Meanwhile, Naruto was gripping his seat as tight as he could as he was doing his best not to run away. He whispered out in fear, don't go in there, don't go in there, no. He bit down on his shirt to muffle his scream. The three shinobi were at the moment in a movie theater watching a horror movie. But not just any horror movie. It was one that had ghosts in it, and Naruto had a major fear of ghosts. Ino was doing much better, but she had gripped onto Naruto's sleeve as she had a mild fear of the paranormal. Hinata, however, was enjoying the movie as she had no fear of it. She munched on a cinnamon bun. It was one of the reasons that they went to this theater. They sold cinnamon buns at the snack bar. Naruto muffled out a silent question. Why are we even watching this? Hinata, who was sitting on his right, looked at him with a smile. Because we felt you needed to relax and there were a few movies that we wanted to watch. Yeah, but why this one? Naruto went white as he heard someone in the movie's theme. Kurama couldn't help but scoff. Coward. He went back to watching the movie through Naruto, enjoying it very much. Elsewhere, with Issei. Issei was walking with Yuma as they began their date. They had breakfast at a diner before since it was early, and now they went off to their next destination. Issei put his hand in his pocket and felt the slip of paper that he got from a back cosplayer on the street. He thought that the flyer was odd since it didn't really have much on it, but he kept it for no particular reason. He looked to his right at his girlfriend and couldn't help but smile. His smile grew when he felt her grab his hand and began to take him where she wanted to go. She is amazing. Later, Naruto, Ino, and Hinata walked out of the theater as they had finished the last movie. Naruto stretched his arms as he didn't usually sit in one spot for so long. Sure, he spent a lot of time on the seal, but he would usually walk around it so he didn't feel stiff. But this was a movie marathon. Finally out of there. I didn't think we would be spending all day in there. There were so many movies and most of them were good. I like the last one. Hinata finished a small cinnamon bun that she bought when they decided to head home. If we ever get the chance we should find a picture of the moth one, and send it to Shino back home. Ino shivered a bit as she thought about what Shino was most likely to do, make more. But shook it off before she spoke. I'm sure that if we tell him that we found one in this world he would want us to send him a couple so he could breed them, or he would want to come over here so he could see it, in person. She then looked to Naruto. And why am I not surprised that you like the one with big monsters on it? A reference to Fox in the Leaf. Early on in Ino's life, she fell into a beehive so she has a fear of swarms. Hinata smiled as she was wiping her hands with a handkerchief, maybe because he has had to deal with one all his life. Kurama heard this and scoffed at this as he put in his 2 cents, even if Naruto was the only one that could hear it. Che. All those monsters are nothing but lightweights. None of them could hold a candle to us bijou. Though I did think that 3-headed one was interesting. Naruto's sweat dropped at this. Really? You like the one that isn't called the king of the monsters? And you seriously need to stop comparing everything big to yourself. We get it, you're huge and powerful. Stop bragging, Too-chan. Ino and Hinata saw the far-off look that Naruto had and they knew that it meant that he was talking to Kurama. Hinata let her curiosity grab her as she asked what did Kurama say. Naruto looked to his girls before saying he is just bragging again, saying that the king of the monsters wasn't as big or as powerful as he or the other bijou are. Honestly, I think he just likes to think of himself as unstoppable and is inflating his ego. Hey! The girls giggled at this as they began to make their way home. Ino looked to Hinata as she asked which one was your favorite. Hinata thought about the movies that they had watched and answered, I like the one with the dragons. I really like how they gave the perception of each side from the dragons and their new riders. Ino nodded before she gave her answer, I like the one with the father and son finding their way through the hardships life gave them. Sure, it made me cry, but to be able to get the job that brought them out of their tough times. She then looked to Naruto. What about you? Naruto thought about the movies they saw and spoke, well, apart from the last one, I like the one with the showman. A band of misfits finding a home like that. It was a good movie, not to mention the songs they had. The girls nodded as they continued on their way home, discussing the movies they had watched. Naruto then suddenly stopped walking and turned his head to his right. Ino and Hinata noticed this and grew concerned. What is it? Naruto narrowed his eyes at the direction he was looking. One of the negative emotions I had been feeling just became malicious. He looked to the girls with a dead serious expression. Whoever it is about to do something bad. The girls understood what he was implying and grew serious as well. Naruto led the girls into an alley so they wouldn't be seen before all 3 vanished, with Naruto leading them to where he felt it was coming from. The 3 shinobi moved fast towards the feeling and Naruto was glad that they had the concealment seals on them. Although he wished he had made them stronger so they could go full speed, but he never got around to doing that since they never needed it. If it weren't for the fact that they needed to stay hidden they would have arrived already. They made it to the park with Naruto barely catching a glimpse of someone with black wings flying away from the area. He wanted to follow but a smell caught his scent. Blood. Looking ahead of him he saw that someone was laying in a pool of blood next to the fountain. Shit. He led the 2 girls to the body and to his shack. He saw that it was Issei. He turned to Hinata and Ino, can you save him? Both girls moved to each of the dying boy's sides with Ino using medical jutsu to scan and attempt to heal the hole in his torso as Hinata did the same while also using her Byakugan. Naruto looked towards where he saw the person fly off and grit his teeth. Looking down he saw a few black feathers. He bent down and picked it up before taking a whiff of it. I've got your scent now, whoever you are. He turned to look at the girls and could feel their disappointment and sadness at what was happening. They looked at him, and he didn't need them to say anything to know what they wanted to say. Damn it! The 3 shinobi were then surprised to see Issei lifting his hand and staring at it. Naruto moved forward to be in Issei's sight. Issei, can you hear me? However, the brunette did not say anything to the blonde. Ino looked to Naruto. I don't think he even realizes we are here. Naruto sighed in defeat as he hated the fact that he couldn't save Issei. However, he did crack a small smile as he felt a bit of lust coming from the pervert. Even with his dying breath, he thinks of. Meanwhile, Rias felt like her red hair was going to become pink soon with all the stress she had in her body. Not only has she not been able to find Naruto, Ino, or Hinata, but her peerage had no luck finding Issei. For most of the day, they had stuck with trying to find both parties, but after a certain point, she had abandoned her want to find Naruto and his group and instead went searching for Issei. However, they had not found him either. Where is that devil's luck when you need it? It was then she felt that she was being called by one of the flyers that her familiar was sent to hand out. From what she could tell, it was an extremely desperate call. Due to how strong the desire felt, she felt that she could handle it quickly and go off to find the fallen angel along with Issei. She moved over to a secluded area before she activated her teleportation circle and homed in on the flyer. Back with Naruto. As the 3 sat there with the dying boy so he would not die alone, they were surprised to see something in his pocket burst into red light, causing them to cover their eyes. They saw that as it died down a red circle appeared a few feet away from them, and it caused them to be on alert. Naruto did not want to deal with whatever it could be, and being cautious about it he sent out an order hide. The 3 then disappeared just as a figure came from the circle. Rias turned around and saw who it was that called her, and immediately her mood dropped. One miscalculation was all it took to allow this to happen. Although she knew that this was a possibility, it did not mean she liked it. She knelt down to him, and with a sad smile she brought her hand up. Not how I wanted you to join my peerage, as I wanted to avoid doing this as you die, but I suppose there is no other way. She summoned her devil wings, summoned her pieces, and began the resurrection process. Hidden in the trees of the park, the three shinobi watched as the redhead girl did something to the body. Ino and Hinata were confused about what was happening, but they turned their heads when they heard something break. Naruto broke off a chunk of the tree as he glared at the redhead. Both grew concerned before looking at the bands he had on his wrist, and could see them light up trying to conceal his chakra. Ino was the first to ask Naruto, "What's wrong?" Naruto took a deep breath, but his eyes showed that he was still outraged as his pupils were still slits. "I don't know what she is doing, but from what she just said, she expected someone to attack and kill him." Hinata gasped as she asked, "Are you sure?" Naruto shook his head, not 100%, but based on the fact that she is feeling regret along with her words, she knew this would happen. He stood up from his crouched position on the branch as he spoke. "Let's head back home. We are going to have to be wary of Rias Gremory." Hinata and Ino nodded as the three vanished from the park, not seeing the full ceremony Rias was doing. Naruto, Ino, and Hinata made it home, with Naruto stomping into the living room and plopping down on the couch. He glared at the wall as he tried to calm down. "Naruto?" Naruto shifted his eyes up so that his gaze fell on Hinata's face, who stood in front of him. He couldn't keep his anger as he saw the concerned look Hinata had. He sighed as he leaned back on the couch. "I'm fine, Hinata." "Just I." Ino moved behind Naruto and wrapped her arms around his neck. "You don't like what happened?" He leaned back as he nodded. "It's not just that. Issei may be a pervert, but he wasn't a bad guy, at least not as bad as his friends." Rias seemed to be remorseful about this, but it seemed like she wasn't that broken about it. It was almost like a part of her was okay with it. Hinata sat next to him as she thought of something. "So what are we going to do about Rias?" "We need to keep tabs on her. She isn't human, that much is certain, but she wanted something from Issei and his corpse must still have it." Ino leaned down so her head was next to his. "Why didn't you leave a clone with her and tail her as you did for all those other people?" Naruto's glare returned. "Because if I left a clone there, it would have attacked her straight away. We need intel, and at that moment I was not in the mood for being patient." The girls nodded as they were in a similar mindset, albeit much more toned down. Naruto got up and sighed as the day started out so well, until that event. "Come on girls, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow I will leave a clone to tail her and see what her plan is." The girls followed Naruto to the bedroom, ready to put this day behind them. Next day, Monday, they couldn't understand it. They were there, they saw the body, they knew he had lost all signs of life, but there he was, walking through the halls as if nothing was wrong. The three were outside with Naruto just staring at Issei through an open window as the brunette was talking animatedly with his friends. "Wah." Ino and Hinata nodded as they agreed with his lack of speech. Ino looked to Hinata and asked, "We both came to the same conclusion when we checked him, right?" Hinata nodded yes. All signs of life were fading so fast that there was no way we could save him. Naruto sniffed the air to see if there was any scent of death, but no, there was no sign of such a scent. But there was a slight change to his scent. It was small and almost unnoticeable, but it was there. He just wasn't sure what it was. It was then that he focused on his hearing. He got a bunch of random chatter until he caught Issei's voice and focused on what he was saying. "What do you mean that you don't remember about Yuma?" Matsuda shrugged his shoulders as he said, "I'm telling you, you never told us about this girl." Motohama adjusted his glasses. "Perhaps you imagined this girl to the point that you believed she was real." Issei felt angered at this as he rummaged through his pockets. "Are you kidding me? I know I told you about her. I even showed you a picture of her, here." He pulled out his phone and began to go through it, only to find that Yuma's contact info and pictures of her were no longer saved on his phone. "What the hell? It's gone." He thought about this as it just didn't make any sense to him. His eyes then suddenly went up to the top of the stairs to see the red-haired beauty queen, Rias Gremory, looking down at them. Rias looked at Issei and could see that he was doing far better. She began to walk down the stairs while keeping her stoic visage, but as she passed the three she shifted her gaze to Issei and smiled. "Good, it looks like he has gone back to a normal life. Saya will have to meet up with him soon to tell him about what he has become." She continued walking down the stairs and off towards the clubroom. Naruto thought about the little interaction that just happened between Rias and Issei. Although it looked like Rias was acting her usual nonchalant persona, the regret he felt spike from her told him that she might have done something that she didn't want to do, though this did help him in thinking that she had done something to bring him back from the dead. Hearing Issei's friend talk about going to his house to watch some porn before screaming out, "Banzai to Arrow," he lowered his hearing while sweat dropping about the pure perversion the perverts had. Who the hell would scream that out in school? He looked to the two next to him, and was about to say something until, "Whiskers." Naruto looked to the side to see another rampaging mob lead by Aika that was after his whiskers. He whispered out, "Shit, Hinata, Ino, meet me behind the school to start our mission." And with that, he dropped his glare and began running with a mob of girls chasing after him. Hinata puffed out her cheeks in jealousy before Ino placed a hand on her shoulder. She huffed a bit before staring at the direction they went. "They never give up, do they?" Ino giggled at this before shaking her head. "Even when we told them that he was off limits, they still tried their best to get to him. Even when we told some of them that he was dating us, most of the girls got even more enthusiastic in trying to catch him, especially Aika. Hinata looked at Ino with a look of defeat, and the ones who were told about that didn't tell anyone else. It was like they didn't want to add to their competition. Even the ones that thought he was a pervert like Issei and his friends soon went back to chasing him after they confronted him, and he apparently bashfully spoke to them. Aika on the other hand was not deterred when she found out. She just grew more determined. Ino shrugged as she and Hinata began walking towards the building. You should know as well as I that when a girl wants something, she will do her best to get it. And Naruto has this charm to him that I doubt he even knows he has. I mean, look at us. Hinata sighed again. We didn't really try to resist that hard. We just decided and it all worked out. If you think about it, we did go through a lot for us to finally admit it though. I still remember how Naruto lost an arm trying to get to us before we would kill MMM. Hinata looked around to see if anyone heard them as she pressed her hand over Ino's. Ino, you know we can't talk about it here. Ino huffed through her nose as she didn't like the idea that they had to hide here, but she knew the importance of staying out of sight. Now more than ever, she nodded before they continued towards class so they could just wait for it to start. ORC. Rias walked into the clubroom as she sighed tiredly. It's not like you to be this tired so early in the day. What's on your mind? Rias looked up to see Sona leaning next to the window smiling at her. Rias shook her head as she moved to the couch and sat down. To be honest, Sona, I don't know. I got Issei into my peerage. I saved his life and it seems he easily got back into his normal routine, but why do I feel like I did something terrible? Sona's smile dropped as she figured that Rias might feel like this. Rias' peerage was made up of those who had troubled pasts and were brought in under specific circumstances. Issei, however, was brought in quite differently. You might be feeling guilty for using him as bait, and it backfired. Rias steepled her fingers as she leaned on them. I brought him back though. I fixed my mistake, but it still feels like something is going to happen. Maybe you're overthinking this. Maybe. Rias got up and began to undress so she could take a shower in the clubroom built-in bathroom. Sona looked out the window as she asked by the way about Uzumaki. Rias paused, her unbuckling her bra for a second before continuing. Once I test Issei for his capabilities, I will think about Naruto. Sona nodded. When will you inform Hayato? Rias was now fully naked as she walked towards the shower room. Tomorrow after school. Everyone will be in attendance for it, and we can add him to the club during that time as well. Sona nodded as she pushed herself off the windowsill and made her way out of the room. I wish you luck with Issei, though I still haven't given up my opinion on Uzumaki. Rias turned the shower on. I know. I most likely will allow you to have him as we found nothing about him in the years he has been here. A part of that rumor that he is dating both Ino and Hinata. Sona paused as she smiled good-naturedly. It's hard to believe based on his nature. He doesn't seem the type to try and gain a harem like Issei and his friends. But then again, this just adds to the mystery of Naruto Uzumaki. She walked out of the room and off to the student council's office. Later that night, can I at least rearrange their minds so they won't be perverts anymore? No, Ino. You can't kill them, make them brain dead, cut off their balls, make them impotent, or rearrange their minds. Ino huffed as she laid back on the roof the three were using to keep an eye on Issei. So far, it was turning out to be a waste of time since the first thing the guy did was head over to his friend's place and started watching porn. And frankly, she was bored. This is a complete waste of time. All they have been doing is watching that weird cosplay smut. How can they even find that stuff entertaining? Hinata shook her head as she sat with her knees up. Everyone has their preferences, Ino. Although Hinata looked as calm and content as ever, she was also finding this stakeout to be quite tiresome. Naruto would have been bored if it weren't for the fact that he was blushing in embarrassment, since he could hear the moans and sexual sounds that came from the videos that the three perverts were watching. He may not be able to see it, but he sure as hell can hear it. Can't they watch something else? Humans have a weird way of entertaining themselves. To watch such things when they could be doing something more entertaining. Oh, you mean like going on a rampage and destroying a few mountains? Maybe 3 or 4. You know we can't do that. Kid, we haven't had any chance of fighting anything. And no! Your training doesn't count. Seeing you beat yourself and helping your mates become stronger cannot be considered a fight. Yeah. We got much stronger, but the three of us haven't been able to test out our full strength. He was brought out of his thoughts when he felt Ino tapping him on the shoulder. He looked at her to see her pointing at the house. He saw that Issei was leaving and heading towards his house. Finally. I was really getting tired of hearing all those ohs and ahs. Let's go. The three followed in the shadows as Issei dazedly walked home. This was something the three noticed and grew confused about. It wasn't until Issei turned around to look towards a mother and daughter a good distance away from him. How can I hear them all the way from here? The three were stunned to hear that Issei had heard the little girl complaining to her mother about some candy she wanted. They knew for a fact that the people here cannot hear that well. They could because they had the training to increase their hearing, and channeling a minute amount of chakra into their ears helps as well, but Issei was normal. Or at least he used to be. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he noticed the boy change direction and was heading towards the fountain where he died. He was unsure how good Issei's hearing became, but he gestured to his two companions to pull back a bit so there was a greater distance between them and him as he whispered out, "Think he remembers he died there?" Ino thought about it as they moved. Possibly. During the day it didn't seem like he had any idea of what happened. It might be a suppressed memory that he has subconsciously forgotten, but if he is going back to that fountain, he might have an inkling about it. Naruto and Hinata nodded as they followed from a distance. Fountain. Issei walked slowly towards the fountain he remembered from his date with Yuma. This was where we had our date. I know it was real. I remember her hand intertwined with mine, her smile when we went out for ice cream. He clutched his shirt as he remembered how it felt to have someone by his side, someone that didn't look down on him or think he was nothing more than a pervert. It can't have been just a dream, could it? The three shinobi were hidden in the trees too far away for the girls to hear what Issei was saying to himself, but Naruto could. Naruto shook his head. I don't know exactly what happened, but looks like this girl really left an impression on him. Hinata looked at him as she asked, what do you mean? Naruto sighed. It almost sounds like he felt how I would feel when I'm with you too. Ino and Hinata now understood that the girl Issei was with meant a lot to him. Ino then gained an inquisitive look. Then there is more to this than we realize. This girl shows up out of nowhere, and then after Issei gets killed everyone forgets that he even said her name. The other two nodded with Hinata speaking up. It would seem that someone erased the memory of Yuma. But the question is, why were we not affected? Naruto thought about it for a second before he mentally asked Tuchan. You got any idea? Kurama opened one of his eyes since nothing of real interest was happening, and he decided to take a nap. There was that small tickle that happened last night when all of us were asleep, but it was so small that it didn't even seem worth mentioning. Maybe that was a genjutsu that erased memories. You didn't say anything? Like I said, Kit. It was too small to even care about, and it didn't even affect you three, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Naruto was brought out of his mental conversation when he felt one of the negative beings he felt throughout the city suddenly appear in the park, and a weird sensation overtook him. He looked to the girls to see that they also felt it. He looked toward Issei to see that he wasn't alone anymore. Not good. Ino, Hinata, circle around him in case he tries to flee. I'm going to. He paused as he saw Issei make a leap that should not have been possible for him. Okay, now I know something is up. Girls, go. Ino and Hinata disappeared from his side as Naruto made his way closer. So you are running away. Issei panicked as every fiber of his being told him to run away from this trench coat wearing man. What the hell is going on? And he turned and ran. Naruto turned in the same direction of Issei as he followed from within the forest. Okay, he is slightly faster now. He then felt the malicious intent coming from the stranger, and the interesting thing was that it was coming from above Issei. Looking up, he saw the guy with black feathered wings and his mind immediately went back to the previous night. Issei ran away as fast as he could to get away from the random guy. What the hell is going on? Who was that guy, and why do I feel like I shouldn't even be near him? He saw black feathers begin to fall from above him, and he remembered that Yuma had the same kind of feathers. Looking up, he expected to see her, but instead, he saw the man looking down at him. He stopped in his tracks when the man landed in front of him. The man looked around to see if there were any other signs of devils nearby and was intrigued by the fact that there was no sign of anyone else. No master, no comrades. Which means you are nothing more than a stray. He brought up his arm to the side and summoned a light spear. Easy prey. Issei turned and ran in fear. If this is a dream, then someone, wake me up. In his haste, however, he tripped and fell to the ground. Turning his head, he saw the man throw the spear at him, aiming to kill him. Someone. Anyone. Help. He shut his eyes as the light from the projectile grew closer. After a few seconds, expecting to feel some sort of pain and not feeling anything, he thought to himself, was it a painless death, or something? He could still see the light shine through his eyelids and took a chance at opening his eye only to see the tip of the spear an inch from him. He screamed in shock and stumbled back from it before looking down at his body to see that he wasn't hurt. He looked back to the spear and saw that someone had grabbed it. Following the arm that held the spear, he saw who it was. Naruto. Naruto sighed in relief that he caught the spear that was close. Thankfully, the spear was moving slow enough for me to catch it. Even at that close of a distance, it was almost at a slug's pace. Better not ever mention that to Bachan. He looked at the down boy and gave his foxy smile. Hey, you okay? Issei was dumbfounded. Wah. How? When? The man was confused as well. How did I not sense him nearby? Who are you? Naruto turned and glared at the man. Give your name first, and then I will give you mine. Damn, that sounded cool. I should watch more movies. The man smiled as he took off his hat and gave a gentleman's bow. I am Danasik. Naruto gave a smile as he answered back. I am Naruto Uzumaki. Now why don't you tell me why the hell you are trying to kill this guy? Danasik placed his hat back on his head. A stray devil does not deserve to live if it has abandoned its master. This is the common rule that we all follow. Hearing what Danasik said caused something to snap in Naruto. Devil? Master. He gripped the spear so hard that it shattered in his hand. He glared hard at Danasik before he said Ino. Hinata. Before Danasik could react, he felt something impact hard into several pressure points in his body and several slashes on joints of his body. He fell hard onto the ground and looked up to see two females, wearing the same uniform, glaring down at him with both holding their hands up with two fingers extended, although the brunette had her thumb pressed with her two fingers as well. How did I not sense any of you? Naruto moved closer to stand between the girls as he glared at the man. You should work on your sense better, but I doubt you will have the chance. He brought his fist up, ready to knock the guy out until a bright red light began to shine behind all of them. The shinobi turned around to see what was going on until they saw 3 figures appear from a red circle on the ground. Danasik saw who it was and knew now that he was out of his league. Not only were these 3 unknowns here and were the ones that crippled him, but the red-haired girl that just appeared told him that the heir of the Gremory family had arrived. I must flee. Lucky or him, his wings were still functional and he used them to push himself off the ground and into the air. The 3 shinobi turned back in time to see Danasik fly into the air and disappear from sight. Damn it. Danasik's voice then rang through the air. You almost had me and I commend you for that. I hope we never meet again. Naruto saw a feather fall from the air and swiped it into his hand. Taking a sniff, he knew 2 things now. 1. This was not the same winged figure that killed Issei before, and 2. He had the man's scent and would not let him get away next time. Rias knelt down to Issei and looked him over to see if he was okay. Are you alright, Issei? Issei was confused about what was going on. First, a weird man pops up out of nowhere to kill him. Next, his classmate and one of the most popular guys in his school shows up and saves him. Then 2 of the beauty queens appear and take the man down. And now the 3rd and 4th beauty queens show up with the mascot of the school with the red-haired one looking him over, making sure he was okay. What's going on here? Rias sighed in relief that he was fine. She did not expect another attack from the fallen angel so soon, but she was glad that it didn't turn out to be another death. I promise I will explain everything to you. Why not do it now? Rias, Akino, Kaneko, and Issei looked up to see the angry look of Hinata and Ino and the dark look coming from Naruto. Naruto took a step forward and spoke with anger clear in his voice. Why not explain what the hell you are, and what you did to him? Rias was a little taken aback by the attitude the blonde had. Not once has anyone seen anger in the blonde's face, and some even thought that he didn't even know how to be angry, but the look he had now showed fury he was holding. She took a breath as she stood up and stared Naruto in the eye. So I was right that there was something about you. Do not try and get out of explaining. He paused for a second as something came to him. So you can teleport. Rias was stunned to hear such a declaration. Yes, she and the other 2 teleported here, but to come straight to such a conclusion was of interest to her. How did you know that? Naruto did not grace her with an answer. He wasn't going to tell her that he had a clone watching her as she went about her business in the clubroom she uses and dispelled when the 3 disappeared in the same red light. He shifted his gaze to the other 2 that arrived with Rias and decided to push deeper into his advantage. So it was you that had Kaneko tailing me all this time. He saw the shock on Rias and Akino and the slight widening of Kaneko's eyes. He looked at the petite girl and said, you're not as stealthy as you think. Looking back at Rias, he spoke with authority. Now answer my question. Rias knew that she had to explain everything, not only to Issei but now to the 3 unknowns that had plagued both her and Sona's radar for so long. I will explain everything to you and Issei tomorrow after school. It is late and I wish to discuss some things with you as well. Naruto did not like the answer, but sensing no lie he took a few steps back till he stood with Ino and Hinata. You better explain everything since I hate liars. And with that, the 3 shined away. Everyone that remained there were stunned at the sudden disappearance of the 3. And they looked around to see if they could get a glimpse of where they might have gone. Kaneko was the most startled as she said, chakra. They used chakra. Akino and Rias looked at her in shock. So that time you said you sensed chakra and he was in the area meant that it did come from him. She then gained a question. How have they remained hidden for so long? Kaneko shook her head, signifying that she had no idea. Rias could only sigh as things were becoming far more difficult. It turns out that her gut feeling was right when she thought that there was something about the 3, but now it seems like it will take some extreme convincing if she wants to add them to her peerage. She looked down at Issei, who was still too stunned to say anything, and she brought her hand up for him to take. Issei, I know you are confused right now, but I promise to explain everything to you tomorrow. But right now, let's get you home. Issei took the hand and got to his feet, and they began to make their way towards his house. He was still so confused that it didn't even register in his head that he was being escorted by 3 beautiful girls. Issei was sitting in his seat in class while looking out the window, while his teacher was going over the lesson. He hadn't slept much last night. After Rias, Kaneko, and Akino escorted him back home, he was told that someone would be sent to get him at the end of class. Throughout the day, his mind was more focused on what had happened recently. I was attacked by winged people, Rias knowing about it, and then Naruto, Ino, and Hinata showing up out of nowhere to save me. What did I get myself into? Naruto, on the other hand, had his head on his desk sleeping comfortably while his teacher ignored the fact that he slept. One of the biggest mysteries that the teachers could never figure out was that despite Naruto sleeping through almost all his classes, he still got high marks on all tests and assignments. The only issue was pay attention, girls. All the female students could not help but find Naruto's sleeping face adorable to watch. He's so cute. He looks like a sleeping cat. I want to pet him. Ino and Hinata chose to ignore what was happening in the classroom despite Hinata twitching every now and then. They were writing in their notebook for the next time they sent messages to Konoha. They didn't need to pay attention to the lesson since they had already studied the material in the book they used, so they were here more for formalities than anything else. This was how the newcomers to the supernatural world spent their time. After class, Naruto opened his eyes as it was the end of class and he enjoyed his nap. He stretched out his arm over his head before he wiped the sleep out of his eyes. Nice nap. He ignored the fangirls squealing at his action as he had gotten used to it. It was then he remembered what he needed to do, so he got up from his seat, grabbed his bag, and went to join Ino and Hinata as they got up from their seats. The three were about to head out until another group squeal resounded at the classroom door. "It's Kiba! What would he want in our class?" Kiba Yudo smiled at the girls around him as he politely excused himself, and made his way to the three shinobi. "Ah, good, you're still here. I've been requested by Rias to bring you over so we may discuss some important matters." The three shinobi kept their usual appearance as normal students with small smiles. However, internally they were dead serious. That was until, "I wonder who is on top and who is on the bottom between Kiba and Naruto." Aika popped up out of nowhere and decided to make things far more difficult. Naruto felt the need to hit his head on the wall, especially since he saw some of the girls begin to gain this dazed daydreaming look. He looked to Kiba and quickly said, "Let's go," before rumors spread. Kiba nodded as he gave a slightly strained smile, though it went unnoticed by everyone indeed. The group left the classroom leaving a group of daydreaming girls. They made their way towards another classroom to pick up Issei, and Naruto could tell that the girls that saw them walk as a group began to smile in a fangirl way. Seems that the rumor Aika no doubt will start hasn't made it far. Hopefully, we can get out of view from everyone before they all start imagining more. They stopped in front of another classroom as Kiba looked to his guests. "Please wait here while I go retrieve Issei." Seeing the three nod, he made his way inside and ran into the same thing as before. A group of girls fawning for his affection. "You're all looking lovely today." He made his way through the group with the girls making small comments about him gracing their presence. Issei heard the commotion and turned his head to see Kiba arrive. "Oh great, Prince Charming is here." He decided that he should just ignore the guy as he waited for whoever was going to be sent here to retrieve him. "Ah, there you are." Issei turned his head as he was surprised to hear Kiba talking to him. "I've come here on the behest of Rias." Issei was now even more surprised that Kiba was the one that came to get him. "Wait, you are the one that she sent?" Kiba nodded. "Indeed. Come, there is much that we need to get done." The girls began to all dread the fact that Issei was walking with Kiba out of the class. "Kiba, don't, you'll catch pervert. You'll lose all your friends and become unpopular." A chuckle could be heard from behind the girls as they were all watching Kiba inside. The girls looked behind them to see the first prince of Kuo. Naruto was trying his best to hold in his laughter, and how low the girls thought about Issei. It reminded him of Jiraiya and the stupid antics. "Kia!" Naruto opened his eyes to see the girls begin to look back and forth between, and they were all blushing. It was like they could not believe that the two princes of the school were standing in their presence, and in all actuality it was. Throughout the entire time that they were at the school, they never interacted with each other. Kiba because he had duties with his fellow devils, and Naruto usually did not interact much with anyone apart from the girls chasing him around. This could be one of the rare chances that the two were in close proximity for longer than a simple passing. "The two princes are here. Oh Kami, please tell me I'm not hallucinated." Several of the girls fanned themselves as if they were heating up, and a couple of them fell back dramatically only to be caught by the others. Kiba walked out with Issei right behind him. Issei was surprised to see Naruto, Ino, and Hinata waiting for them. "Wait, you guys are coming too?" Naruto smiled as he nodded. "Of course. We all have some things we need to talk about." Kiba nodded and gestured for them to follow. As they walked towards their destination, Naruto looked Issei over and could not see anything wrong with him. "Hey Issei, you feeling alright?" Issei was startled at the sudden conversation, but once the question registered he nodded. "Yeah. I'm just a little confused with what is going on." The three shinobi nodded with Ino saying, "Don't worry. We should be getting answers soon," she said as she turned her gaze at the back of Kiba's head. Kiba could not help but think that he was being threatened by that statement, but he showed no visible reaction to it. They made it to the ORC, and inside the room were Rias, Akino, Kaneko, Sona, and Tsubaki. The group all paused what they were doing and turned their gaze to the new arrivals, with Kaneko pausing from eating her chocolate, Akino smiling, Rias sitting at her desk, Sona and Tsubaki now giving an analytical look to Naruto, Ino, and Hinata. Something that startled all that watched them come in was the change in Naruto's facial expression. As he came in, it looked like he had the usual bright personality, but the second the door closed it shifted into a look of someone who had just entered enemy territory. Not only that, but Ino and Hinata gained a stoic visage as to not give any clues on how they really felt. Sona and Tsubaki were extremely curious about this, as they had not once seen an angry look at the almost always smiling Naruto, and to see Ino and Hinata have a face that would put professional poker players to shame was just as surprising. Sure, they were told about it by Rias, but to see it is another matter. Kaneko got up from her seat and moved closer to the three with no reservation. She looked up at Naruto and narrowed her eyes, trying to figure something out. Naruto looked down at Kaneko with a quirked eyebrow. "What?" Kaneko looked him up and down before saying, "No chakra." "How?" Naruto gave a small smile as he brought up his hand and poked her right between the eyes. "We need answers first. After we get them, maybe we will give our own." He then turned a hard look at Rias, "But that all depends on her. So let's start with what you did to Issei." Rias flinched at the look Naruto gave, but she knew this was coming. She looked to Issei and began to speak. "Well, I suppose we should get this meeting started." And so it went, with Rias explaining the three warring factions, what Issei had become, the reason for his death, and what role Yuma had in it. Throughout all this, Naruto paid rapt attention to the details that were given. In all honesty, he thought that it sounded similar to what would be done in the elemental nations. However, instead of it being because of what village you are from, it is more on what race you are. Something that bugged him was, since when does being one or the other affect the kind of person you are? It should be one's actions that should be judged, not what they are. He also kept his gaze at Issei as he could not only see the hurt he had when told that Yuma was just doing this to get the chance to kill him. He could not imagine how it must feel for someone you care about just acting so they could kill you. Or rather, how it would feel like if you were oblivious to their intentions. So that is everything. You have become one of us now, Rias finished as she and the rest in the room unleashed their wings. Issei was stunned by this, but for some reason, something burst from his back, causing him to turn his head to see that he has the same kind of wings as them. Naruto looked over the wings that were now on their backs and was interested in the way they look. But this was a minor thing, since despite the fact that everything she had said was true, she still avoided one thing. Why don't you tell him that you used him as bait to lure out the fallen angels? Rias sighed as she knew she would need to come clean. I was unsure if the fallen angels were really after Issei at the time. We had discovered them in our territory not that long ago, and when we discovered them around our school we wanted to see what they were really after. I had wanted to be absolutely sure that what they really wanted was Issei, or it was just a passing notion. As such, I had allowed them to date, and see if she would show her true intentions and reveal some more about where they had stationed themselves. I just did not account for losing sight of Issei during their date, and that being when she would strike. Naruto began walking closer to Rias, leaving Ino and Hinata where they stood. You took too great a risk, and because of this Issei ended up dead, and now part of something he didn't ask for. Naruto's glare was piercing, and the way his eyes bore into hers almost made her feel small. Issei nervously walked up to Naruto in a placating way. Come on, Naruto. It's all good, and she saved my life as well. I don't mind being part of this devil faction. Naruto turned his head to look at Issei. Issei, you have become part of a war that you didn't even know about. He turned back to Rias. You used an innocent civilian to lure out someone that you knew was after something. If you wanted to find something out, you should have tailed her or did some digging of your own. Rias sadly nodded. Yes, I know my mistake, but I have given him something that has made him more than what he used to be. But was it his choice? Sona walked up to stand by Rias. It was a calculated risk, and she already regrets the fact that she had made this mistake. You do not need to make her feel worse for it. Naruto shifted his gaze from Rias to Sona. I know she regrets it. But her choice still got him killed and thrusted him into your war. He then turned his head to look at Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko. Be mad at me all you want, but she is still in the wrong here. This stunned them as they were sure that they weren't showing any signs of anger. They all had the same thought. How did he know we were angry? Naruto turned to stand back with Ino and Hinata before leaning on the wall. You said something about Issei having a sacred gear? Rias nodded as she felt not only reprimanded but a bit miffed that she would not be able to get answers to her questions about him. She knew that at the moment she was not his favorite person, and if she started asking now, he would most likely not give them to her. She didn't need to get worse on his bad side when what she really needed was help. She looked to Issei and chose to try and get him to unlock his sacred gear. Right, we shall try and have you activate your sacred gear. Issei suddenly felt self-conscious now that all eyes are on him. Rias gestured to him. Issei, raise your hand. Issei responded accordingly, and raised his hand as if he was in a classroom. Right. Rias smiled at how nervous he was acting. It was cute in a way. Relax. I want you to focus on the power you have deep inside. You should be able to call upon it when you find it. Issei shut his eyes with his arms still in the air and tried to do as he was told. Look for the power I have. For several seconds he tried to find something that would call upon his power. He scrunched his eyes tighter in concentration, but he could still not find anything. Snicker. Giggle. Naruto, Ino, don't be rude. Issei opened his eyes and turned around to see Naruto pressing his face into the wall in a clear attempt to hide his laughter, and Ino hiding a clearly visible smile behind her, and with Hinata trying to get them to stop. Hey! What's so funny? Naruto pushed off the wall and did his best to stifle his laughter. Sorry, Snicker, but the look on your face was just too funny. Issei huffed as he looked away. Well, this is the first time I'm doing something like this. Naruto finally stopped his snickering and took a deep breath as he gestured for Hinata to follow, and they walked over to stand in front of Issei, with Hinata standing to his left and Rias on his right. He grabbed his still lifted arm and brought it down, while also bringing up his other hand before placing his hands in an open palm praying form. I want you to close your eyes and focus right here. He pressed his finger to the center of his torso. Clear your mind of everything and focus on this point in your body. And don't try to force it. It should be a natural part of your body, so you won't need to force it to come out, just call it. Issei decided to go with what they said and closed his eyes and began to focus on the spot that Naruto pointed at. Sona and Tsubaki were interested in how Naruto seemed to have this idea of bringing out a sacred gear. The way he said made it seem like he had done something like this before. Sona just found Naruto more fascinating the more she learned about him, and despite his animosity towards Rias, it seemed that it was only towards her, and not the rest. Naruto looked at Hinata and asked her, activate your Byakugan, and see if you can see the energy source. Magic, I believe they called it. Hinata nodded as she brought up her hand into the tiger seal before activating her Jujutsu. This had caught the attention of everyone as they were interested in what had happened to the girl's eyes. Naruto paid no mind to them as his focus was on Issei. He knew they would ask about it, but that didn't mean he would answer them. He still wasn't sure if he should divulge anything to them. After a few seconds he stepped forward and bonked Issei in the head, no thinking of. Issei rubbed the spot he was bonked before looking to Naruto. How did you know? Naruto gave a knowing smirk before stepping back. You're easy to read. He actually felt the guy's perversion rise, and with how Issei was, it was the only reason he would have those feelings. Issei was thinking of, now try again and don't think of. Issei sighed as he tried again. He wasn't used to doing something like this, but Naruto seemed to know what he was talking about, so he would trust him. Naruto looked to Hinata and whispered, anything? Hinata narrowed her eyes as she nodded yes. In fact, I can see everyone here has a type of energy inside their bodies. It is different from chakra, but it is there. I also see a chess piece within several of them. Ino quirked an eyebrow as she decided to join her fellow shinobi. Chess piece? Inside them? Hinata nodded as she spoke, but kept her main gaze on Issei. I had seen it early when we were watching him with his friends, but I had not focused on it enough, and I assumed he merely had it in his jacket pocket. There is a number attached to it as well, the number 8. Sona and Rias had their minds running a mile a minute as they couldn't believe that Hinata was able to see the chess pieces inside their peerage. As far as they knew, there was no real way to do such a thing, but here she was seeing the pieces they used. Sona focused on Hinata's eyes as she adjusted her glasses. What are those eyes of hers? Are they an unknown sacred gear of something else? Hinata then noticed something happening within Issei. Wait, there is something. Issei had tuned out the world around him. He tried his hardest not to think of like he normally would, and once he was able to clear his mind, he found himself in front of a raging inferno with a large silhouette gazing down at him. That boy is an interesting one. If he was able to instruct you into contacting me. The figure looked down at Issei and nodded. Well, partner, it is a pleasure to finally speak with you. I am known as Drake. Issei was awed by the large being before the inferno grew, and he covered his eyes as it brightened. Issei's eyes snapped open as his left hand gained a red gauntlet with a green gem on the back of his hand and yellow spikes that ran down it. Level 2. Whoa! What's this? Rias stepped forward with a wide smile on her face. That is your sacred gear. It is what the fallen angels wanted to destroy by killing you. Sacred gears have been in existence throughout all of human history. Most of the time in high-standing figures and those known for exceptional achievements. Naruto looked to Hinata and she answered without him asking. His energy had jumped in potency, but it is mainly focused on that gauntlet. Ino nodded as it would make sense if the object itself was said to be powerful. It was then that she had asked something in a whisper that they needed to know. Will you be able to tell if anyone else has magic? We haven't really been looking, but if we are on their radar now, we need to be ready. Hinata nodded as she whispered back. I had not focused my sight on anything other than chakra. Now that I know what to look for, I can tell if someone is from the devil faction. I would need to see a fallen angel to see if there is any difference, but I will keep an eye open for any irregularities. Naruto nodded as he turned back to Rias and Issei as the former had finished telling Issei about what they do in general. Sounds like the missions back home, but simple fetish requests? It was one of the things Rias described some of the contracts they had taken. It was vague in a way but also clear on what could be asked of them. His sweat dropped when he heard Rias tell Issei that if he worked hard enough he would be able to have servants of his own, which got Issei to shout out, I'm going to have a harem. The three shinobi sweat dropped at that declaration as Issei kept proving how odd he could be. Naruto rolled his eyes at this. Of course you use that to get him motivated to do it. Though Naruto felt that his statement was not entirely true. Is there something more to it, or am I losing my touch? Doubt it. Where the hell have you been, Yu-chan? Sleeping. But this whole devil talk sounded interesting. Maybe, but I don't need to change anymore. I'm already not human. I don't need to become something else. What about your mates? This had caused Naruto to pause for a minute. He wasn't interested in it, but one thing did catch his attention in becoming a devil thing. Immortality. But not for him. He was practically already immortal, but Ino and Hinata weren't. He knew that he would outlive them, and it hurt his heart to think about it, but if they were to become one, they could stay with him forever. But the idea of them becoming the servant of someone did not sit right with him. He would need to discuss this with them, but right now was not the time. Naruto then saw that Issei was packing up some flyers that he was asked to send out to the public. On the job experience. Not bad, but he watched as Issei made his way out of the clubroom and off to do the job. As the boy left, Naruto spoke. Issei, stay on your toes. Devil you may be, but the fallen angels will most likely still be after you. Issei felt all his nerves fail him, and he at first wanted to turn around and not do this delivery, but harem. 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 He regained his nerve and nodded towards Naruto. Thanks for the heads up. Naruto smiled as he nodded to the brunette before he watched him leave. He kept his gaze on the door as he sensed the slight fear the guy had to pinpoint where he was in the building. He didn't even turn his head when Rias began to speak to his group. Okay, now we can move the conversation onto you three. Naruto felt the prankster in him show itself after so long of being dormant. And despite the fact that he wanted to do something grand to someone, he right now had a mission he needed to do. Ino, Hinata, let's go. The three began to head towards the door, which shocked everyone else in the room. Rias took a step forward as she called out, hold on. You said you would answer some of our questions. Sona stood next to Rias as she nodded. She is right, Uzumaki-san. I do not see you as someone who would go against his word. Naruto had opened the door and paused before leaving. He turned around with his foxy grin clearly visible. I said that it would depend on whether or not I like your answers to what happened to Issei, and even if they are satisfactory, I never said when I would tell you. Rias was wide-eyed as she realized what he was doing, with Sona actually smiling back at the boy. Clever. Naruto then gained a dead serious look. Don't forget that I am still pissed at you. He pointed at Rias while ignoring the clear signs the others were ready to defend her, whether verbally or physically. I'll give you your answers, but only when I feel I can trust you. Right now, we are going to keep an eye on Issei. He may have power now, but that doesn't make him a fighter. We will talk when I can trust you, Rias. He then moved aside for Hinata and Ino to move past him before walking out himself. Before he closed the door, he looked back, gave his usual happy smile, and did a two-fingered salute. Catch you later. And with that, he closed the door. Everyone there stood in silence until Akino giggled. It would seem he got the better of us. Rias groaned as she slumped a bit. I'm really going to have to gain his trust if we want to know more about him. I didn't even get the chance to ask him about joining, though with how he feels about me, I doubt he would even consider it. Kiba smiled sheepishly. Well, he did say he would give us answers later on. Let's just hope it's soon. Kaneko took a bite out of a slice of cake she now had hopefully. Despite her usual stoic appearance, her mind was thinking about the three. There was something about the chakra they used that seemed interesting to her. More so Naruto than the other two. Hinata may have been the only one that let her chakra be known, but she still remembered the brief moment all three used chakra before. She wanted to know more about them. Unbeknownst to the rest of the room, a small mouse was hiding under the couch out of sight and listening to the conversation they had. Later, the three shinobi were on a rooftop watching Issei leaving his client's apartment. Ino blew out a puff of air on her bang as they watched Issei walk his bike down the street. I can't believe they summoned devils to their house to cosplay and do weird things like that. Hinata smiled as she leaned on Ino's shoulder, as she was at least enjoying the night. Everyone has their own form of entertainment. Naruto was on one knee as he kept his focus on the boy and the oncoming enemy. True. Like how you like my special massages. Naruto turned his head to the right to give Ino a knowing look. Ino and Hinata blushed as they both enjoyed those massages. Ino then smiled at Naruto as she spoke softly. Maybe when we get home, we can have another session. Naruto would have loved to say yes, but he shook his head instead. I doubt we would have the time. Here they come. All three got up and made their move. Issei was grumbling to himself on how he messed up on his job. I can't believe that I didn't even get him to sign a pact. All we did was talk about Dragon Ball Z the entire time. What the hell is wrong with me? He was suddenly brought out of his thoughts when he suddenly felt something wrong. He turned around as his gut was telling him that there was danger heading his way. This feeling, is it the same guy from before? Fascinating. Issei saw that it was a voluptuous woman walking towards him with an irritated look on her face. Who are you? The woman kept her focus on the boy in front of her. As she continued to stride forward, I was expecting something more, but I was clearly sent here for you. My name is Calwarner, and I will be your executioner. She unleashed her black feathered wings as she prepared to attack. Issei grew worried at the sight of those wings as he immediately remembered Yuma. Oh no, don't take this personally, but you have to die. She brought her arm up to summon a light spear. Before she could even channel the magic to create her weapon, golden chains erupted from all around her before wrapping around every one of her limbs and wings before bringing them in, and another chain encircling her. Calwarner looked at the chains in panic as she could not tell where the chains were coming from. What the hell? Sorry, but you aren't going to be executing anyone. Hinata! Hinata dropped onto the ground in front of Calwarner and struck the woman in the visible areas, disabling the woman entirely. Calwarner coughed up blood as the attack she was just hit with caused her insides to scream in pain. Naruto dropped in with the chains coming out of his back. He walked up to the woman that was now glaring at him, but she could not say anything since the strikes that Hinata did caused her throat to be so sore that it was almost like someone dumped acid down her mouth. The last guy got away before I could capture him. You on the other hand won't get the chance. Issei was surprised to see them here as he had no idea they were close by. Naruto, Hinata, don't forget about me. Ino landed next to Hinata with her hands in her family's jutsu pose, mind destruction jutsu. She made sure to hold back enough not to cause any damage to the mind. She only used enough force to knock the woman out. Issei shouldn't be surprised about what happened, but it happened so suddenly that he was still a little shocked. What? Naruto kept his chains around the knocked out woman as he looked to Issei. We were watching over you to make sure that you don't run into trouble. He looked at both girls and nodded before he summoned a single shadow clone. They'll take you home to make sure that nothing bad happens. Ino, Hinata, and the clone walked up to Issei as if they were honor guards. Naruto smiled at the flustered look Issei gained before he nodded to his girls. You know where to meet up. With that he shined away with the fallen angel in tow. Issei looked to the clone in confusion as he reached out to poke him, only to have his hand slapped away. I'm not some museum piece that you can ignore the sign and poke. Issei rubbed the hand that was slapped before he looked at the clone in awe. So, you can clone yourself. The clone smiled at Issei's awestruck expression. Yep. Comes in handy when I need to be in two places at once. Issei couldn't help his excitement as this was the kind of power you would see in anime or manga. So do you use it to skip class and do your own thing? The clone's smile dropped as he felt two pairs of eyes glaring at the back of his head. Boss tried that once, he got the lecture of a lifetime. Issei turned his head at the two girls behind them only to see them smile at him innocently. He tilted his head in confusion as he asked them what's he mean by that. Ino waved her hand dismissively. Oh, nothing for you to worry about. The clone grimaced at how sweet those words came out of her mouth. Even if they aren't devils, I have 2 demonesses for girlfriends. Evil. Elsewhere, Naruto appeared in a forest, miles away from the city with the fallen angel laying on the ground still wrapped up in his chains. This would have worked better if I was in a dark room with only one light and a single chair. It was then that something clicked in his mind. Is that just the stereotypical interrogation room? It was like that in Konoha and I saw it in several movies. He shrugged his shoulders as it wasn't important right now. He made sure the barrier tags were still in place as this was a spot that he and the girls trained in secret. Looking at the still unconscious woman, he brought up his hand into a gun motion and used his extreme chakra control to shoot out a splash of water on her face. Bah! Cough wah! Calawarner looked around to see that she was no longer in the city. It was then that she felt that she was wrapped up in chains, including her wings. What the hell? Rise and shine, sleeping beauty. Calawarner looked up to see the boy that had spontaneously popped up out of nowhere when she was going to kill the brunette. You! Naruto smirked before he went into overdramatics. Me. He pointed at himself before pointing at other things. You, that tree, that rock, the sky. And they all lived happily ever after. Calawarner grit her teeth as this boy was playing around like a fool. She flexed her hand and tried to summon a light spear so she could flick it at him. Keyword tried. Wah! All she could do was have some light particles flicker in her hand before they disappeared. Interesting. Calawarner glared up at the boy to see him looking at her with his hand on his chin. It would seem that my chains disrupt your magic just as much as it does chakra, or it could be Hinata's hits did it, but we can worry about that later. Naruto used his chains to lift her into the air so he could be more eye-to-eye with her. Now I'm a little pissed that the trench coat guy got away from me since I wanted some answers about what you guys have planned, but I guess I will get them from you instead. He tilted his head to avoid the glob of spit she shot at him. Calawarner smirked at him as she wasn't one to talk. What would a little boy like you be able to do to me? You won't get shit. Naruto gained a sadistic smile on his face. You don't seem to understand the situation you're in. You can't access your power, you're stuck here, and I have a prankster side of me that hasn't been used in a very long time. Calawarner scoffed. Pranks? Like that would do anything to me. Naruto conceded that notion. True, pranks, in general, are harmless. But they would just be for my own fun. I have a friend Anko, that was an expert in torture and interrogation. She taught me a thing or two and now I get to try them out on you. He walked up to her before moving to her wings. Let's start small. Does it hurt when I pluck out your feathers? He grabbed one before plucking it hard. Calawarner winced at it but remained silent. Unfortunately, this did not go unnoticed. Oh, so it does. Let's see how long it takes till you at least squeak. He plucked out a few more and smiled. Don't worry. From what I can tell you have plenty of feathers to pluck, so I'm going to keep going till you are bare. The thought of losing all her feathers caused some dread to enter her heart. She attempted to retract her wings, but the chains seemed to be keeping them out as well. Hey wait, she winced as he started. This little feather went to market, this little feather went home. He looked at her with an all too happy smile. Don't worry, this is only light teasing. We will get to the real fun afterward. Calawarner did not know if she should be afraid or not, as the boy was right. She was powerless at the moment, and these little feathers went wee. Next morning, Issei was walking to school still thinking about what happened yesterday. Man, to be able to clone yourself like that. If I could do that I wouldn't have to go to school so early in the morning. Man, that would be so friggin' awesome. Kia! Issei turned his head when he heard a female scream, only to be greeted by the panty-clad ass of the said girl. He gained a wide perverted smile as he stared at it. The girl winced as she got up from the ground and rubbed the side of her face. I fell down again. I'm such a klutz. She returned around and got into a sitting position, not realizing that her skirt had risen up and her panties were still visible. Issei couldn't help but notice how cute the girl was, but he didn't recognize her. Whoa, who's that? In the trees behind Issei, Naruto focused his gaze on the girl as he had been on the lookout for someone. Long blonde hair, big green eyes, foreign, and wearing clothes for a nun. Must be her Asia Argento. You gotta be kidding me. Was what Naruto mumbled to himself as he watched Issei and Asia converse with each other as they made their way to the church that Asia was supposed to be at. The first thing that happened was something you would see in manga, as the girl had fallen over, giving them a clear view of her panties and act as if it was just her clumsiness. But after she got up and Issei got out of his perverted gazing, the two had begun to converse with each other. And Issei wasn't perving over her as he would normally any cute, sexy or breathing girl that exists. Okay, he may be being a bit harsh on how Issei was, but that was because he had caught Issei trying to peep on his girls a few times. Maybe not specifically them, but Ino and Hinata were there, so he can be a little petty against the brunette. Even if he was a little sorry for him being thrust into a war. Speaking of which, I'm going to have to ask her about this. He looked back to Issei and Asia and couldn't help but find it interesting that Issei was acting like a normal person, asking her about why she moved her from the church she came from. Though there was a little sadness there that told Naruto there might have been a story behind it, but he was more focused on the incoming negativity. It wasn't moving fast, so he didn't need to rush, but he was ready for anything. Issei was smiling as he was carrying Asia's luggage and talking to the girl. So you are here to become part of the church in town? Asia nodded as she brought her hands up in prayer. Yes, I was transferred here as a way of expanding our teachings. I am thankful to our Lord to have been blessed in coming to this beautiful city. Issei brought up his free hand to his head as he winced at the mention of the Almighty, though he didn't know about that yet. Asia looked at him and grew worried at his distressed face. Oh my God, are you alright? Issei nodded as he cracked open an eye. Yeah, just a headache. He took a deep breath and was going to wait for the pain to subside, but he saw Asia gesture for him to lower himself. Not seeing the harm, he did as asked. After he saw her bring her arms up to his head, he felt relief as the pain in his head subsided. Asia brought her hands up and began to use her ability to heal the pain Issei was feeling. Naruto focused on Asia's hands as the green glow reminded him a bit of the medical jutsu Ino and Hinata used. I'm not sensing any chakra, so maybe it's like the devil's magic. He was now understanding why the fallen angels had invested much into this girl, though he felt that he would need to pay the defeathered fallen angel another visit since she had failed to mention this to him. Well, more like she will be defeathered again since he found out that they regrow after some time, though he figured that it required magic since the regrowth was slow thanks to his chains and now seals. Issei opened his eyes fully to see a green glow around Issei's hands. Wow, thanks. The pain is gone. Asia gave a bright smile to him. I'm glad you feel better. Issei smiled back as he stood up straight. That's some power you got there. Must be cool to be able to heal others. She nodded before her smile dropped a bit. She was able to hide it well from Issei, but Naruto saw right through the forced one. Naruto hopped onto another branch and saw that they were now close to the church. Something else he thought was interesting was the one that was closing in on them had stopped and was just staying where they were. We gotta watch her. Issei looked up towards the church and felt every fiber of his being telling him he should get as far away from it as he can, but he needed to make sure that Asia made it. Well, there it is. He lifted his hand and pointed to the dilapidated building. You sure that this is the church you need to be at? It doesn't look like it's been in use for a while. Asia nodded. Yes, this is the place. Don't worry, I'm sure that we will be fixing it up soon. Issei shrugged as he put the luggage down. Well, if you're sure. I gotta get going. I have something I gotta do. Maybe we can hang out again sometime. Asia beamed at this as she bounced on her feet. I would love that. It must be God's will that I meet such a kind person like you. Issei once again felt like a knife pierced his head, but he grit his teeth and did his best not to show it. Through his teeth he grunted, I hope we meet again. Asia, he waved at the girl as he turned and began walking away. Asia smiled as she watched Issei walk away. Well, aren't you all buddy-buddy with him? Asia looked behind her to see the person she was supposed to meet. Good morning, Rainer. Rainer walked up to Asia as she looked over to where Issei went. Little perv is still alive, huh? She could figure out why he was still alive, but at the moment, he wasn't that important since she can't bring attention to her group. She looked to Asia and nodded. Well, we should get you settled in. Let's go. She gestured for Asia to head over to the church, which the young blonde girl complied. Rainer turned back to glare in the direction of Issei. If he tells his master about us, we are going to have to fast-track the ceremony. She turned to follow Asia to the church while looking at the girl with a look of sadistic glee. Naruto kept his gaze on the retreating two as his nose twitched. So you're the one that killed him. His gaze fell on Asia and couldn't see any reason she would join a group that felt like they could slit your throat at the drop of a hat. I can think about that later, but for now. He then looked at Rainer's back as a sadistic smile came upon his face. Time to have some fun. He created 4 coals before they transformed into crows and flew off towards the church. The original could feel his prankster side coming to the surface, but he would have to hold off on it for now. He has some things he needs to do, not only to mess with the flying black chickens and the devils that have their eye on him, but he also has a trip he feels he needs to make now. Academy. You must never go near the church again, Issei. But why? Issei told Rias about the odd feeling he had when he went over to the church while holding back on his encounter with Asia. Rias, Kuno, and himself were in an empty area of the old school building as they discussed these matters. Rice stood in front of a stained glass window as she spoke to her new pawn. If the devil is found close to a church, it can cause problems for angels and devils. Since we are still on strained terms with them, they can see a devil closing in on the church as a potential action against them. Not only that, but the exorcists that are affiliated with the church use sacred gears. And they will use them against you if they have the chance. Issei thought about Asia's power and couldn't help but think. Was that a sacred gear? Is she an exorcist? Kuno moved to stand next to Rias as she continued where her king left off. You were fortunate that we were able to bring you back as a devil, but if you are to die again, there is no coming back. You will forever be gone. Issei looked down as this all was starting to sound as if he would not be able to meet with Asia again. Geez, morbid aren't ya? The 3 devils jumped as they heard someone speak and looked around to try and find the voice since it was one they did not recognize. Rice narrowed her eyes as she flexed her hand ready to launch an attack. Show yourself. Suddenly from the ceiling dropped a figure that landed in the middle of the 3, getting them all to jump back. The figure stood up and they were all startled to see it was Naruto. Issei went wide-eyed as he pointed. Where the hell did you come from? Naruto turned to look at Issei as he smirked. He then spoke in a voice that sounded like a gruff man. What are you talking about? I've been here the whole time. Rias did not drop her guard as she lifted her hand and was ready to fire at him. Who are you? You may have his appearance, but you sound nothing like him. Naruto turned to look at Rias as he smiled and spoke in his normal voice. Good to see that you are wary about obvious things, but relax. It's actually me. I just felt like messing with you three. Rias flared her power more with Kuno surging her lighting. You expect me to believe you after you come here with an obvious flaw in your disguise? I don't know. Rias froze as she heard Naruto's voice right behind her, and hear him whisper in her ear. Do you expect an enemy to not do something to you if he was able to get behind you? Rias then felt him pat her cheek, which caused her to flare her wings and jump away. She turned to see another Naruto? She landed and looked confused at what she was seeing. What? The Naruto that was behind her shrugged as he spoke. One of my abilities. The other Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke before Naruto moved to the railing and leaned on it. You can relax. I was just messing with you since you guys know that I am not a normal human. Kuno pulled back her magic but kept her stare at him. And you just so happened to be spying on us. Not really. I was spending the morning following up on something I was able to find out. As it turns out that the church is the base of the group of fallen angels, and they have some sort of plan in the works. Something to do with a newcomer to their ranks. His eyes shifted to Issei for a brief second before looking Rias in the eye. And from what you just said, you won't go there because it will cause issues for both sides. But you should know about where they are in case something happens. Kuno and Rias looked at each other before the raven-haired beauty spoke up. Yes, that is all true, but why are you telling us this? Naruto smirked as he pushed off the railing. Because I am going to be wrecking their plans. The three looked shocked at his declaration as they were not expecting this. Rias stepped forward as she asked, do you know what you are saying? If you mess with the fallen angels, then they are going to have the biggest migraine any supernatural has ever had. Was he being a bit cocky? Yes. But he already started messing with them, they just don't know it yet. You say that you won't go there because you are devils and it could cause problems for your side. But I am not sided with anyone, so if things go wrong, no one will be to blame but me. Rias could see his point in a way. He had said that he wasn't a yokai, but there was still an issue. Not only that, but she was slightly worried he was getting into something way over his head. Still, your chakra could be seen as the yokai moving into territory that isn't theirs. If you are caught, not only will the fallen angels deal with you, but the devils will begin to go against the yokai. Naruto didn't lose his confident smirk. I've been hiding here for 4 years with only you and Sona having a feeling about me. And yet you had nothing solid to go on. I'm sure that I can go about unnoticed. He hardened his gaze a bit as he looked to Rias. Look, I'm still a little mad at you for getting Issei into this war, and it will be a while till I don't want to hit you. Kuno tensed up in preparation to defend her king while Issei shouted out, hey. Naruto ignored them as he continued, but I know you aren't a bad person. Just don't do it again. The devils relaxed a bit since it didn't look like he was going to do anything, as Rias still felt some guilt at what caused the tension between her group and his. Naruto looked to the side at a clock that was on the wall, and smiled. He should be there soon. This confused the group as they were not sure what he meant by that. Naruto then reached behind him and pulled something out before he tossed it to Kuno. She caught it, and looked to see it was a feather duster. But there was something odd about it. The feathers looked familiar to her. She looked up to Naruto, who smiled at her. I said I learned a few things about the fallen angels. The one I captured was uncooperative, so I had to make her talk. It was a simple thing, but I was able to get a few items from our conversation. Pillow, feather dusters, and he pulled out another item and showed it to the group. A few quill pens. He placed it on the rail before he walked away. The devils were stunned about what he just did, but one of them had a different reaction. Kuno could imagine what Naruto had done to the fallen angel, and wickeded her lips as she brought the present to her face and rubbed her cheek on it. A man after my own heart. She rubbed her legs as she tried her hardest not to let her sadistic side get to her. Not that she was trying so hard. Naruto shivered as he heard what she said and felt the emotion coming from her. He needed to get out before Kuno did something. He looked back to Rias and gave a foxy smile. Before I go. He brought his hand up into a hand sign, causing Rias's cheek to light up as kanji appeared on it. The light caused them to cover their eyes before it died down. Naruto held in his laughter as he saw his work done, and then he went up in a puff of smoke. Kuno and Issei were surprised to see Naruto disappear like the last one, but when they turned to look at Rias they were surprised at what they saw. Kuno giggled at this as she was liking this side of Naruto. Era. He is just full of surprises. Issei was mad at what Naruto had done as he thought it defiled a part of one of the goddesses of the school. Rias was confused at their reaction but saw Kuno bring up a mirror. What she saw brought a tick mark on her head. Her face, which was usually blemish-free and untouched by makeup, was now painted as if she was a clown with a big red nose to go with it. Oh, I'm going to kill him for this.